have to give the people what the people want. Nice fairy tales about heroes and dark fairy tales about God. Our fathers believe that, but we don't, so let's keep that a secret.
Hello, and welcome to Media-eval, a medieval pop culture podcast, where we talk about how medieval and medieval-inspired movies, TV, and books depict the medieval world. What do they get right? What do they get wrong? And what do they tell us about how modern people see the medieval past? I'm Sarah Ifft, a medieval historian, and today I'm joined by another medieval historian. Yes, there are more of us. Mireille Pardon. Hi, Mireille.
Hello, thank you for having me on your podcast.
Welcome to your, I understand, inaugural podcast appearance.
Yes, this is my first time on the podcast, and I'm sure after my performance here, just everyone will be begging me to be on their podcast.
Everybody please immediately tweet at Mireille to invite her to be on your podcast.
No, please don't.
So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and about why you made me watch this movie?
Yeah, so first of all, I feel like I may owe you an apology for that second bit. But yeah, so my name is Mireille Pardon. I'm an assistant professor of history at Berea College in Berea, Kentucky, where I teach classes about the medieval world. And I was in grad school with Sarah. She was several years ahead of me, so I was always looking to see what she was doing. And I work on 15th century Flemish cities, so that's why I really wanted to watch a Dutch movie. I also wanted to practice my Dutch. I like watching Dutch television for that reason. So that's the real reason I picked this movie. And then I was a bit disappointed upon actually seeing the movie. But there were actually two other reasons I picked the movie. I had heard of this movie while in Dutch class, because apparently it was a thing in the news when it first came out in 2018 that there were Christian groups that were protesting it because they thought it portrayed Christianity poorly.
I usually am not on the side of Christians protesting movies, but I kind of get where they're coming from with this one.
Yeah, so to be honest, I feel like it was more just anti-religion in general than anti-Christianity. Yeah. But yeah, the Christians come off pretty poorly. So I'd heard of it in the news in the context of like, oh, we're all in Dutch language class. Let's talk about the news that's happening in the Netherlands. And also, I've actually always kind of really liked the story of Redbad's almost baptism. And that's a story from the life of St. Wolfram that I've actually told students in class, because I think it's an interesting example of like how people think about the living and the dead. So I wanted to watch this film, and then I made you watch it too, and now I fear that I've made a terrible mistake.
Well, it'll be fun to discuss. So this movie is, I don't think we actually said, is Redbad, which is a 2018 Dutch film starring as Redbad.
Geesnaber.
Yeah, a lot of the people in this movie are Dutch people, and I could not pronounce their names to save my life. The one exception to this is Jonathan Banks as Pepin of Herstal. Jonathan Banks being Mike from Breaking Bad. And I will just say right now that he is on my list now for the awards that I have for least convincing medieval person.
You didn't think he seemed like he just was oozing medieval culture?
Okay, I understand why people don't do fake accents, and they often are ridiculous. But he's just sitting there like doing this like American accent, and I'm like, I just can't see you as a 7th century.
A lot of different accents in this movie. Like, this was not a movie with a consistent idea of what sort of accent anyone was trying to do.
Right. So it also stars Renee Soutendijk.
It's Renee Soutendijk.
Soutendijk, okay.
Yes.
We also have as Svenna Lisa Smit.
Yes.
Did I get that one right?
That sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah, Lisa Smit. I'm also not the authority on how to pronounce these names. I speak Dutch with a really heavy Flemish accent, which does make a difference, and also probably just a really heavy American accent. So I don't want some actual Dutch speakers from like actual Friesland to hear me pronounce these names and get mad at me.
I mean, you will do better than I will, at least.
Yeah, I mean, at least we're getting somewhere close, but...
As Freya, we have... I'm not going to try this one. I have no guesses.
Yeah, so this is Loes Havercourt.
Great. As Charles Martel, we have Thibaut van de Bora.
Yeah, okay. Thibaut van de Bora.
And as Willebrord, we have Jack Woutersen. Woutersen. Okay. Great. In case anybody couldn't tell, I study the Western Mediterranean and Romance languages and do not know Dutch. The first real segment on this podcast is the enumeratio, where we do a bit of a recap of the film. And I'm going to start with just a brief orienting recap, and then we can get into some general discussion. The film Redbad tells the fictionalized story of how Redbad came to be ruler of the Frisians. It follows Redbad as he is exiled from his people as a result of being blamed for his father's death, but then returns after hearing news of his sister's marriage to Charles Martel. He returns home along with his new wife and child to lead the Frisians against the Franks. Lots of battles ensue. Also, this movie is 5 million years long.
Yeah, also, I just wanted to say, Sarah, I was really impressed with your summary of that movie, because if you had asked me to summarize that movie, I would not be able to do it in such a concise way, because the plot is quite meandering. I think you made it sound like a better plot than it is.
I think I skipped a lot.
Yeah, it also takes 2 hours and 45 minutes. I did
Yes, it
hear,
does.
though, that they also made it as a miniseries a little bit. Like, they released it as a film in theaters, and at the same time, they released it in, like, chopped up chunks on TV. And I think it would have worked a lot better as a miniseries, because that would have at least made me not expect it to have a normal movie plot that was easy to follow.
Right. I think that would have worked with the sort of meandering, like, episodic nature in some way of this film. I'm not sure it would have solved all of its problems, but it would have solved some of them.
Oh, no. It would not have solved all of the problems of this film, for sure.
We open with some fun, got some chanting over entrails and some concerns about how everybody's starving, and it's time to have some human sacrifice.
I mean, how would we know that they were pagans unless they were doing human sacrifice?
Exactly. And we also get the detail, which I'll talk about more later, where somebody's like, you're all fine with human sacrifice, but you don't have daughters. So I guess we're led to believe that only women are, like,
and
young
that was also what
women
we
are
saw on the
sacrificed.
screen. Like, they were all very young, very pretty, very blonde, all dressed in white with crowns of thorns being sacrificed.
Right. Yeah. So that seems to be the deal in this society, is that we have this identical parade of blonde women.
Well, maybe that's why they had to sacrifice some. They were like, we can't keep these women straight. They all look the same. We need to thin the herd a bit.
Nor can I.
Fair.
We get a fight between Redbad and his father, because the father thinks it's important to respect their customs, and the Frisians are free, and according to their free will, they should be able to do this whole ritual where they murder people. Redbad thinks that it is barbaric and bad, and also his girlfriend's on the sacrifice list, and he doesn't want his girlfriend to die.
Yeah, of course, Redbad, our hero, is the one sort of enlightened person among all of them who has this opinion.
Always.
No one else.
As always,
Yeah.
as is generally the case in medieval movies, right? That we have to like follow this guy who's like weirdly an atheist.
Yeah, and it's also this like a weird sort of insertion of a modern mindset, but only into one person. Or in this case, I think actually two people, because kind of with Charles Martel too. But anyway, that's right.
It's this weird, like, we have the hero and the villain, and they're both like 21st century atheists.
Yeah, and then everyone else is just like a normal person.
We've got this ritual, and Redbad is upset because they draw lots, and his girlfriend's the one who is gonna get killed. And then, surprise, the Franks arrive.
They do, and they look like they have arrived from not just another place, but perhaps another century.
Oh yeah, it's like the 14th century invasion over here.
Yeah, so that was a surprise.
Yeah, we will continue talking about the material culture of this movie, which is baffling, because in particular, it's like the Frisians look like they're in the 5th century, and the Franks look like they're in the 14th.
Yeah, it also was like no one was correct, was what was weird about it. Yeah,
no,
you had
absolutely not.
Some people were too early and some people were too late.
Yeah, and then they kind of like meet in this horrifying middle where it's like,
so
why are we going into the
average,
past? Right.
On average, we're in the 8th century.
I think on average we might actually still be in like the 10th, but you know.
Ah, well, they tried.
Yeah, you know. So the 14th century invasion arrives, and his dad's trying to retreat, and Redbad just wants to save his girlfriend. Okay, there's also a different blonde woman that we see being set on fire. So I was like, oh, okay, the girlfriend's dead already. But no, it's a different blonde woman. And I'm sorry, but there's just this parade of blonde women with the same hairstyle, and I have no idea which is which for most of the movie.
Also, speaking of setting people on fire, this movie had a lot of fire, which is fine. I like fire. But I think that if you're going to have this much fire in your movie, you really need to make sure that you're good at doing special effects with fire. And they did not make sure of that before deciding to put so much fire in this movie.
Nope. No, they did not. I mean, you know, maybe they just too, like the Frisians, are like sort of, you know, out of date barbarians and don't understand how to do fire special effects.
Wait. There were some fire special effects that were good. So in some ways that is sort of mirroring the different time periods of the movie.
Right.
Sometimes the special effects are modern, sometimes the special effects are like 5 years out of date.
Yeah. Also related to that, just on the costuming. Sorry, my cat just leapt over the computer and onto my lap. On the costuming, there's also like Redbad at some point, I swear, is wearing just like a chainmail hoodie.
Yeah. And also there's a scene where Cinda, Redbad's sister, is in sort of like the background. I think it's in his baptism scene. And she legitimately looks like something you could wear at a prom, like in the modern day.
Yeah.
Like it seems like they just sort of gave up and were like, oh, well, I mean, like women wear dresses, right? Like how different can they be?
Here's a dress.
Like, well,
it's
yeah,
long.
Like, dresses actually might look kind of different in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, they might look different in the 7th, 8th century.
Yeah, whatever century of the Middle Ages we're in at this point.
We're supposed to be everybody in the late 7th into early 8th over the course of this movie.
Right.
That's where we're supposed to be, in theory. Charles Martel kills Redbad's dad, takes the city of Dorestad. We will talk later about how this is a city, and you would not guess that from this movie, but it is. And we find out then a little bit about the Franks that we have, Pepin of Herstal and his son, Charles Martel. Pepin, as I said, being played by Jonathan Banks, who I just cannot deal with. I just absolutely cannot.
There's something I feel like I admire, though, about watching an actor who's sort of phoning it in. Like, I believe that he was having a fun time on the set of this movie. I don't think he was trying super hard with the acting, but he was having a good time.
Yeah, he was having a good time. I mean, he's kind of just still playing Mike from Breaking Bad. It's just that now
actually, though, have you seen him in other movies, though? How do we know this isn't just him in every single movie he's in?
No, I mean, maybe it is. I'm not sure I've actually seen him in anything else. So, I mean, maybe that is just him, which, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. It is what it is, buddy.
Yeah, you know, he was sort of entertaining on screen if you forgot that this was supposed to be a serious movie.
Right. Meanwhile, back at the Frisians, everybody is very upset. So Redbad's father, Aldagisi, is dead. And basically they're blaming Redbad because he wouldn't retreat. He had to go save his dumb girlfriend.
Which also, like, to be fair, that's kind of a good point. I think one of the failures of the movie for me is that from the beginning, I didn't really understand or relate to Redbad. So there were a lot of scenes where I was like, guys, you kind of have a good point. Like, Redbad should have been listening during this battle and not being reckless and distracting his father. And now his father's dead. I mean, maybe I wouldn't say we should set him adrift out to sea, but...
Right. I think that's maybe a little extreme, but I also, like, I don't know. I'd be cool with them not, like, immediately being like, Redbad should be king.
Yeah, especially after they just had this big confrontation where they were all saying, yes, we need to sacrifice these women. Not that I'm, pro-human sacrifice, but he was just like actively going against the community. Everyone disagreed with him. And then he distracted everyone in battle and did a stupid, selfish decision. Mm-hmm. So I was not really on Redbad's side.
Yeah, I'm in general not especially on Redbad's side. I mean, it's my sense is that this is a film that's relying very heavily on the expectation is that the people watching this movie already know who Redbad is and think he's very cool.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, he is kind of like a Frisian folk hero.
Right, so, exactly.
Yeah. So maybe there is sort of that sense of, we're just riding on the reputation of like, this is a sort of national hero that we'll all recognize the name of. But maybe not know enough about that everyone will be annoyed that this is completely fictionalized.
Maybe it does work in that particular context, but then the struggle is that if this is, again, something that's going to be available to an international audience, I don't think it holds up exactly for people who don't already have like strong feelings about Redbad that they're bringing to the movie.
Because you want your audience to be connecting to your main character and sort of like feeling what your main character is feeling and understanding what they're going through. And I was not always clear on Redbad's motivations or how he felt about things. Even when he was sort of, staring out to sea and brooding and having weird visions of himself as a child, I was not emotionally connected to those scenes, and I just didn't care.
I'm just not here for you, buddy. So so they sent Redbad adrift onto the sea in a raft to sacrifice to the god of the sea to be like, hey, fuck this dude.
Also, he should not have survived that. I know that's like the most nitpicky thing about this movie that had a lot of other inaccuracies, but I am surprised he survived that, especially when he was actively going underwater at some points.
Especially also because, all right, maybe you can just tell me, because at some point I just lost track of who all of these people are. Where does he end up?
So he ends up, it's what's supposed to be in Denmark. They're supposed to be Danes.
That's far?
Yeah, no, it is far. And I don't think that makes sense with that tiny, this was not, for people who have not seen this movie, it's not like he was set adrift on a ship or a large raft.
No,
or
he is
anything that
lashed
looks
to
particularly
a
buoyant.
raft that is just larger than his body.
Yeah, that's clearly going to sink in about 5 seconds. So the fact that he made it all the way to Denmark or some area of where there were Danes.
I don't even totally understand how he got that far without dying of hunger or thirst. Like, how long would it
Also
take?
that. Yeah, also that. Like,
Right?
there just isn't. I mean, to be fair, I do not know all of the like currents in the North Sea. Like, unless there's a
No, I
current
mean-
that just like zips you immediately, but I do not think there is.
Right. Like that it's far-ish, right? Like it's far enough that like it should take like a few days, right?
Yeah, it should definitely take a few days. Also, sorry, I'm just looking up where Dorstadt is because unless I'm wrong, I don't think that Dorstadt.
Was it not on a coast?
I don't think it's on the coast.
Of course it isn't.
Because that was also something I was sort of confused about. I was like, are they walking to the coast? Or like, what's going on here? Yeah, okay, Dorstadt is not on the coast. I mean, it's not like that far from the coast.
But it's not directly on it, right?
But no, it's not on the coast. I mean, it's on a river. It's on the Rhine. So like you could follow that tributary out to the sea. But yeah, so that's kind of maybe not the best.
Not great. Not doing amazing here. So and then we meet the Christians. Who are
This
the
is
real
actually
villains.
one of my favorite scenes.
With the hipster priest.
Yeah. Also, just watching someone say the line, "On this rock, I build my church," and then take
Right.
the rock and bash someone's head in. I
Yep.
was very much not expecting that. And it has this
Nope.
kind of amazing like shock and awe value. So actually, if we're just
Yeah.
talking on like a scene by scene level, I thought that was a well-filmed scene because like you're introduced to this Christian preacher and you assume
Mhm.
like, oh, they're going to be all peaceful, they're saying this famous line from the Bible, and then all of a sudden they're bashing someone's head in. So that I liked that one scene of the movie.
It's like, okay, I'm not sure that's how they have in mind the rock. Normally, I'm not sure they usually have it in mind as like a thing that you use to bash people's head in, but it's surprising because he's an old guy too. The guy who is
Also that I think
right?
that added to it. Yeah, that this is this
Yeah.
very old man, and like he's a preacher. He's kind of losing the crowd. They're like booing him, and then all of a sudden, he's
Right.
bashing someone's head in. It was a well constructed scene.
Right. And they spend a little time arguing that the preacher is like, well, we cannot spread the word of Christ with violence. And then he goes, I come not to bring peace but the sword. That's what it says. We also have what is clearly a like 12th century Byzantine icon that they've got here.
So like with the costuming and the architecture, we have just with the Christian art portrayed here, a just array of time periods and geographic origins.
Yes, we do. It's fascinating. They're having some real fun. They're doing some forced baptisms.
Yeah.
They're just having a grand
And
old
we
time.
get to meet Charles Martel, who's our other sort of enlightened atheist randomly traveling into the Middle
Right.
Ages.
Our enlightened atheist meets cartoon villain.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
It's like, I don't often say like, oh, I feel bad for Charles Martel, and this is the one moment where I'm like,
yeah, he
I
has
feel
a
like you
whole-
deserve better, Charles Martel, than your portrayal
Yeah.
in this film.
Yeah, that's true. It isn't often that you have that thought about Charles Martel, but no.
No.
This is not a great portrayal of him.
So Redbad arrives in Denmark, I guess, and makes friends with some different blonde people, including
Yeah.
a nice
Every-
blonde woman who looks just like his ex-girlfriend.
Also, their names are quite similar. His original girlfriend in
Mhm.
Frisia is named Fenna, and now we have Freya, who is a beautiful blonde Viking woman who also inexplicably really likes Redbad. I was
Yeah.
astonished this entire movie. Wherever Redbad goes, everyone seems to like him, and he's not particularly charismatic, or maybe I was
No.
just missing his charisma. But everywhere he goes, everyone's super into him. Even Charles Martel seems to think he's super cool when they
Yeah.
finally meet towards the end of the movie. I don't understand why everyone likes him so much. Also, the king or leader of the Danes that he meets.
Yeah, he's
It's
like,
like-
I think you're great. And like, I would appreciate the other Danes are like, who is this guy? Fuck him.
Yeah, which is the correct reaction. when you
Yes,
find a
to
random
like a
dude,
random
like,
stranger lashed to a raft.
especially because there seems to be this assumption when he first arrives, like this guy was obviously banished / executed from his own community.
Yeah, because why
So
else
there's,
would
like-
you be lashed
yeah.
to a raft?
So it's a very logical suspicion to maybe like not immediately accept this person. But no, he just waltzed in, beautiful woman, leader, and then
Mhm.
leader of the community. You're also just like, you're amazing. Stay.
They just love him. He stays there. We have a 3 months later that he's been here for a while. He is still not exactly integrated into the community, but he and Freya are clearly, close, and he's, doing things for them. He's, chopping some wood.
Great wood chopping shots.
Right. And then the Swedes invade?
It was someone. I wasn't really following who it was. Yeah, I think they do say. I think you're right. I think it was the Swedes, but I didn't really write it down, so it could have been the Swedes.
So I wrote that down. Right.
It would make sense.
First I thought the Danes were the Swedes, and then I'm like, wait, no, but the Swedes are on tour invading. So I was really struggling.
Yeah, then that makes sense then. Yeah.
So the Swedes invade, and we
have our second major battle scene. I do think this movie could be divided into just major battle scenes. Nothing else that really happens was very important.
Right. And the battles are at least often very visually striking.
That's true. And I think that was an area where effort was being put in. Because one thing I found confusing about this movie in general is there was this kind of offset amount of effort in various things. And there was clearly effort in this area. Just other areas, like having a plot that makes sense or character development.
Or costuming or research.
Yeah, or those.
Redbad is initially told not to go fight, that it's not his fight. He's some weird stranger. They don't want him. But he ends up...
Again, fair reaction.
Yeah, exactly. The people who are like, Redbad, like, I don't get you. I'm not that into you. Those are the people that I understand in this movie, as opposed to the people that are like, ooh, Redbad, I'm so into you. I just want to be your best friend or girlfriend just immediately right now. And that's like half the character. That's like most of the characters in this movie. And I find
all the major characters. And it's very surprising. They should have made him a lot more charismatic if they were going to do that.
Yeah, because that's the thing is he's not charismatic. And I will say, I do not blame the actor whose name I will not try to pronounce.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah. He was. I've already forgotten his name. What is it like? Case Naber? Anyway.
Yes. It's not his fault. It's that the way he's portrayed, he spends a lot of his time being stoically silent, or he doesn't even make very rousing speeches, right? I mean, he like says relatively little and then he stabs things.
Yeah.
And so it's this odd, he's supposed to be very charismatic and everybody's supposed to be very drawn to him.
I mean, I just wonder if maybe the screenwriter is not one of the people who's trying very hard, because come to think of it, the only time that he does give a good rousing speech is in the baptism scene, and those lines are lifted like directly from a historical source.
Yeah, right. His only good speech is his one real speech.
No one had to actually write those lines. Whereas all the other lines that he said, like maybe someone had to write those and they didn't. Just weren't trying, or
right. And then they're like, oh, let's just have him sort of grunt again.
Yeah, it'll be fine. He can just stare off into the ocean.
But it's just this odd, like, it replaces charisma with him being just very large and Aryan.
Yeah, which maybe that does it for some people. Clearly, everyone in this movie.
Right, apparently. It just not for me especially, but to each their own. He goes down to the battle, which is, very dramatic. They're catapulting some like balls of flaming pitch to the ships.
Okay, again, actually, cool moments with fire.
Yeah,
but
decent moments
you
with fire.
Need to animate your fire better. Yeah, there was some cool use of battle technology.
Yeah, he ends up fighting. He and Freya are at some point fighting back to back, and they win, and they drive off the Swedes.
So romantic.
So romantic. That's how all relationships begin.
Yeah. Fighting off the Swedes.
I just want a man who will fight the Swedes for me.
Also, can we talk about Redbad's makeup? Because I think he looks great in his eyeliner, to be totally clear. But I'm just confused about when he thought this is the time to put on my eyeliner right before battle.
Eyeliner.
And why was that decision made? Because I personally would want to have very clear vision when I'm fighting. I mean, I frequently go for a run when I still have eyeliner on because I'm lazy and don't take off my makeup. And it's quite annoying to be like exercising and you get like tears in your eyes from the eyeliner.
Like the black streams, right?
Yeah. So why, if you didn't start off with eyeliner on, which he doesn't when he's first told, like, no, you can't go to battle, Redbad. And then later when he shows up to the battle, he at some point put on eyeliner. And that just seems like a weird choice. Like maybe wait until the battle's over and you're about to go to the party to put on your eyeliner.
Gotta get out your battle eyeliner.
Opinions about his eyeliner.
You gotta have your battle eyeliner.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's like a confidence boost. That's probably good for battle. Yeah. Because I mean, Freya also had lots of eyeliner on. So
yeah.
But she usually
Battle
has
eyeliner.
eyeliner though. Yeah. So
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
she
he
didn't
put on the
specifically
eyeliner
battle.
for battle.
Yeah, specifically for the battle. That's what makes it weird.
They win, and at that point, the king of the Danes says that, you know, you're one of us now. You can do whatever you want. You can even
Because
marry
like
somebody.
everyone else, he really loves Redbad.
But except again for the other people, the other Danes, because like he's like, you can even marry somebody if someone will have you. And then somebody from the back is like, who would want that? You got to find a blind woman.
But then, of course, like the most beautiful woman we've seen, who's like also apparently amazing in battle, is just like stands up and like, I want to marry you. He's like, okay, cool.
To which he also comments, to which I'm like, yeah, you don't even know my name.
Yeah, also, there seemed to be some implication that he'd sort of done a vow of silence thing, but it wasn't super clear. That was not, I mean, that was another part, like many of the things in this movie where it's not made explicitly clear, and I'm not sure what they were going for, but it seemed to be implied he had a vow of silence when he was first accepted into the community.
Yeah, because they keep calling him the silent one.
Yeah, and then I guess he decides to start talking once he gets a marriage proposal.
But I don't know, when he's striking, because he said something before that, I don't know, he strikes me more as like the taciturn one. And that doesn't really change that much.
Not quite silent, just taciturn.
Yeah, they get together. We have some cutting back and forth between their marriage proposal scene with other people and them fucking in a tent, as they do.
As one does. Also, the tent had like other people in it, but you know.
Yeah, you know. The other thing I'm going to note about this sex scene is that this sex scene is very light on the nudity. I mentioned this because I would like to contrast it with a scene that happens later.
Oh no. Yeah, I think I know what scene you're going to contrast that to. Yeah, that was not a good thing about this movie.
Yeah. So yes, I'll just say now, interesting that the consensual sex scene is the one that has really little nudity. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That is a good point.
Choice. We also do already in this scene get the first glimpse at the fact that she is wearing a cross.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, and that's something that in this movie could have been interesting. Like, it could have been interesting to see sort of how that was dealt with. But it never ends up to be anything interesting. So don't get excited this is going to be some interesting story about people's different feelings about religion. There's going to be no nuance.
Mike from Breaking Bad wakes up
Not Pepin of Herstal wakes up, to be clear. Mike from Breaking Bad wakes up.
Mike from Breaking Bad wakes up and finds that his church is on fire. It's also just this weird set of lines where, okay, so I don't speak Dutch. Maybe they just did a bad job with the subtitles, but no, he's not subtitled because he's speaking English. So of course he doesn't speak Dutch.
Those aren't the Dutch speakers. So actually, I will say, this was one thing I kind of liked about the movie was the use of language, how they actually had people speaking in different languages from different places. That was the one thing I liked about this movie.
Right, with the one exception that it's like, oh, well, so these people are speaking Dutch and this guy is speaking American English. Got it.
That was
as the Franks do.
But yeah, wait. So what were the lines that he was saying that you were about to complain about before realizing they were in English?
Right. So he just goes, "Godless heathen, my church. He will punish." And it's like this weird. It almost is portraying him as like he's like having a stroke because he can like barely string a sentence together.
How I interpreted that was he's supposed to be really angry, but he's just not choosing to act.
Yeah.
So it just comes off as strangely because he's supposed to be so mad, but he's not like putting in the acting to seem mad.
But you know, they do punish. They murder a bunch of people,
as one does,
and then have some discussion about this with our Frisian representatives, who now are so the person who ended up becoming king in Redbad's place is his cousin Jura.
I think it's Jura. Yeah, but also his uncle, Ibert.
Yes. I'm glad you know the name of his uncle because at no point in the movie did I know the name of his uncle.
I'm pretty sure they only say his name like once. So I think it's only because I wrote it down the one time they said it.
They're now in charge of things, with Jura officially being king, but his father playing a significant role at least. They're arguing with Pepin because Pepin's like, you know, I let you basically rule yourselves. Why aren't you doing the right thing? Why are you burning my stuff? And he's like, they're exploited and abused, and they don't even know what a tax is, poor dumb barbarians.
I was about to say, can we talk about the whole, like, we've never heard of taxes before? Because there's this really weird dichotomy being drawn between this, like, completely freedom-loving people who are all like, I lived a free life, I'm not going to die on my knees, and, like, I don't even know what taxes are. And that just doesn't make any sense.
This is leading into the beginning of my many feelings about what is the message of this movie.
I mean, don't pay your taxes. Maybe one of them.
Yeah, it's feeling a bit conservative, maybe maybe a bit conservative in its ideology.
One of those movies where like it's more of a reflection of current politics and current concerns than it is of early medieval concerns.
Right, and I don't know that much about Dutch conservatism specifically.
Well, there is a far-right Dutch party, and there may have been some tweets about this movie.
Great.
Yes.
Exciting. Redbad is having a great time with his wife, and now she's, I guess time has passed because now she's pregnant.
Yeah, and the baby's gonna be named Popo, which is a really cute name. So
is it?
I think it's a cute name.
I find it to be a very silly name.
Okay, but that's an actual name from like Frisian leaders.
It is.
So
it is.
Yeah, but I also
that is the name of Redbad's successor.
Yeah, and it was the right choice to portray him as a baby, because when I hear the name Popo, I cannot picture a grown adult. Like, I understand that he must have at some point been a grown adult.
Right.
But also, when I hear the name Popo, I think that's clearly a baby. So the movie made the right choice on that front.
Yeah, like, no, you can't take Popo seriously as a man, like, leading people into battle.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Which actually explains a lot.
Yeah.
With the historical Popo.
Yeah. I would not follow Popo into battle.
So at this point, his happiness is destroyed when he learns that his sister, Cinda, has been, so they keep calling her Cinda, which is short for Diasvind or something like that.
I only just wrote her name down as Cinda.
Well, I'll talk later. I looked up the real person.
Okay. Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Also, I think it might be Jura, not Yura. I don't know why I told you it was. I think I've been messing up all the names now.
I mean,
oh well. Some Dutch person is going to listen to your podcast and be like, "This woman clearly does not speak Dutch." And I'm going to be very.
My apologies to the Dutch people.
Yeah, I would also like to apologize as someone who supposedly actually knows Dutch. I do think it's difficult to switch back from like English to Dutch pronunciation. But anyway.
Yeah, because they're just similar enough, right? Like there were words here and there that I could definitely catch.
Yeah, and I think especially with, the kinds of dialogue that were in this movie, like, and Freie man, als Freie Wille. So.
Little similar to English, little similar to the Nazis, little column A, little column B.
This movie.
Yeah, I've got some thoughts. Upon hearing that Cinda is being taken off to be married against her will, they go off to rescue her. Redbad, his wife, and the baby. They're bringing the baby to the war.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we're going to see the baby in another battle scene later. So, I mean, maybe that's why Popo just grew up. I don't know. He saw a lot of battles as a kid. That could have helped. But yeah, no, inexplicably brought the baby when surely she has a lot of family members that would have loved to take care of that baby. Back
she has a sister who just had a kid, I think.
Yeah, there are a lot of good options here that were not taken. Besides, we should take the baby on our rescue mission.
Yeah, war baby.
War baby. Or Popo.
Cinda arrives in 13th century Ram, a very long journey which took her several centuries.
She must have been very confused about the time travel.
Yeah, right? I'm sure it was a very long, tiring journey. She has another blonde girl with her who I absolutely thought was Fenna. I swear to God, I was convinced this was Fenna. 100% convinced that her attendant was Fenna. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that is a problem when you only have blonde women in your movie.
Yes.
And they also kind of have similar facial features.
And the exact same hairstyle.
Yeah, that also does not help.
Yeah, Cinda I can tell apart from everybody else. She has a bit distinctive looking and she has different hair. Mm-hmm. And she has like kind of wavy, curly blonde hair and she doesn't have as much of like the braid thing. Mm-hmm. So Cinda I can tell apart. The other ones just, I don't know.
Random blonde woman.
I'm really struggling.
I would like to again say that maybe that's why they were trying to sacrifice some of them. They realized they had too many. It was getting confusing in the village, so sacrifice them.
That's rare, Fenna. Damn it.
And it would also help if they were not named very similar names, but
To me, it also just very much adds to like my vague feeling of this movie that so I do have to say one thing in favor of this movie, which is that I, for this podcast, invented a test, which is the absolute lowest bar, like even lower than the Bechdel test, which I call the ifft test, which is a test according to which there has to be at least one named woman who doesn't die. And I have watched multiple movies that do not pass. This passes. We'll have a couple.
Oh yeah. Well, that's good. Good on this movie. I mean, it would have been nice if we had women who had like their own personalities outside of how they related specifically to Redbad, but you know.
Yeah, but you know, as I said, for the absolute lowest bar test, we do have a couple of named women who survive the movie. But there is, I think, still this vague sense of women as more or less disposable. Well, we have 3 total and 2 make it.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. No. So yeah, because 2 make it. Yeah. Yeah. Because we have Edwina and we have Fenna, but they die.
Or yeah, so we have 4 total and 2 make it. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. 2 out of 4, 50% yield. But I think the bigger problem with the women was that all of them are only really exist as characters in terms of how they relate to Redbad.
And that contributes to them being vaguely disposable, right? That the women who are the women that he doesn't have a relationship with, it definitely doesn't matter if they die. And the women he does have a relationship with, their deaths are all ultimately about him.
Yeah, and like you have characters like Edwina who are supposedly in this position of power, but their role in the narrative is really just to like advise Redbad, tell him about how eclipses work, and then die dramatically so he can be upset.
It's to advise Redbad, but it's also even, and we'll get to more about her in a second, but it's also even to like shore up Redbad's ego.
Yeah, no, also that. Yeah.
Like this whole bit of the movie where it's just like a bunch of women telling Redbad, oh my God, you're so cool, you should be king.
Yeah, and it seems like they only have conversations with him, or really the only conversations we see women having in this movie at all are like to Redbad about Redbad. And it's like, they probably have...
This movie definitely does not pass the Bechdel test.
Oh, no. Well, I mean... Well, no, never mind. That doesn't count. I mean, you have Fenna and Freya talking about Jesus, who is a man.
I don't think that counts. I don't think that counts.
I don't know. Maybe if we're like some form of Trinitarian heretics who only believe in like the divinity of Jesus, not his humanity, then they're not talking about a man. But no, that's the...
He's sort of masculine-y. I don't think it counts.
Yeah, no, I also do not think that counts. But yeah.
Cinta, poor thing, is in 13th century realms and is having a creepy fucking conversation with Pepin, who is like, we're accepting into your family like a daughter, and then he's like, and you can sleep in our bed. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? What's happening?
Yeah, the words, we're accepting you into our house as a daughter, did not seem to sort of apply to like the rest of that scene.
No,
also,
they did not.
The scene seemed just there to prove that like the Franks kind of suck, which I feel like has already been proven. I'm not sure that was like necessary.
Right. It's this. We have all of these scenes that are really about setting up the Franks as Disney villains.
Yes, yeah. So also they have to be like horrible to this woman in Redbad's family. I mean, also
because how do you know somebody's bad if they're not mean to a woman?
Yeah, and also that like her sort of role in the narrative is to have bad things happen to her, not for anything related to her, but so it can affect Redbad.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. The only real purpose as her character is to motivate Redbad to go and be a king now.
Yeah, like many of the women in this story, they only really exist in terms of how they affect Redbad.
Right. Carmen agrees. Good job, producer Carmen.
That did sound like a rousing endorsement of what I'm saying. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Carmen.
Absolutely. She spits in his face. He is not happy, so he executes her blonde attendant.
But again, one less blonde woman do you remember who she is, Sarah. So that's just trying to help you out, getting rid of more blonde women.
But again, this is like my real struggle, is that I just kept thinking specifically that his ex-girlfriend was being murdered.
You're like, oh, ex-girlfriend back from the dead again. Oh, there's Fenna. Hey, girl.
And I'm like, oh, I guess she's not dead. And then I'm like, oh, I guess she's not dead. It just keeps happening.
I mean, to be fair, I don't think this was a movie that was particularly easy to follow in general. And I the more I think about it, the more I have suspicions that there were deleted scenes that would have made it make more sense.
Right. Yeah, that seems very possible. They have a lot of uncomfortable interactions with Cinta, so that Cinta has with Pepin and with Charles, and it's not good. Meanwhile, there's also our good bishop, Willibrord, who is baptizing Cinta, and also, did you know that baptism involves a lot of forcible drowning?
Yeah, so I learned from this movie that baptism is waterboarding. I hadn't realized.
Yeah, right?
Before.
Who knew?
Yeah, no, I know, right? Who knew? I mean, come to think of it, I I've never technically seen a baptism happen in person, so maybe that is
maybe
what
there's
baptism's like.
waterboarding.
Yeah, maybe it's waterboarding, and just no one ever told me. This was missing from my education about medieval
Right.
Christianity.
Right.
Someone should have told me.
Yeah, why didn't anybody let us know?
Yeah, that baptism, specifically in early Christianity, was always waterboarding.
I'm so
Someone should have told me
embarrassed.
at some point.
So I'm going to share now, actually, the thing that I came across randomly while thinking through some of these things, which is that, fun fact, in 2014, apparently Sarah Palin pissed off a bunch of Christians by saying, oh, you can't defend America's enemies, can't make them uncomfortable, not even a smidgen. Well, if I were in charge, they would know that waterboarding is how we baptize terrorists.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Yeah, so that's a whole hell of a quote.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Oh my gosh.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, she and Willibrord would really get along.
Right.
They have similar opinions about other religions and how baptism functions.
Right. But yeah, so it's, again, I almost never agree when Christians are complaining about things and complaining about how persecuted they are and how badly you're portraying Christians. I'm always almost like, but you're not great though. And this is the one, both actually the Sarah Palin thing and this, this is the one it's yeah, this is kind of offensive to portray your religious sacrament as literally an act of torture.
Yeah, and I definitely could get behind how this could be offensive, specifically in the context of it is a sacrament.
Right, and especially because
I hadn't actually considered that aspect of it before. They are taking a specific religious ritual within a religious faith, and then depicting it as torture. That's a little different than just portraying Christians as evil.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that does seem sort of offensive, especially also because it seems to me like such an odd decision, because of course it's not like there weren't forced conversions. This just isn't how they worked. And so it's just such an odd choice to make this move to have this use of the sacrament itself as a means of torture when you could just have somebody holding a sword up to somebody's neck.
I mean, I think it was a choice made for visual reasons, because it is they do have these very visually,
it's very dramatic
baptism. Yeah, but no, that is kind of not great to be using this religious ritual in that way.
And as I said, I very rarely agree with Christians when they're offended.
Actually, this movie made me look up, is baptism ever waterboarding? Which sounds really dumb, but I was sort of second guessing at myself, because they portray it so much in this movie. I was like, is this just a phenomenon I've never heard of?
I also looked it up. I'm like, is there any evidence? Right. I'm like, is there any evidence that this ever happened? Because it's just, because it is just portrayed so many times. And that's how I came across the Sarah Palin quote.
Oh, yeah, because I was just surprised that this is something that someone would make up. But yeah, I did not find a precedent for it. But
no, nor did I.
Yeah.
Except for Sarah Palin.
Except for Sarah Palin. Well, when did Sarah Palin say that? Maybe the
2014.
Director. I mean, maybe Rule Rhino was like, hey.
Right. So Redbad is running around kind of half-assedly trying to save his sister while she's being forcibly baptized and tortured, which he doesn't succeed in doing.
A great job. I don't know why he thought he and his wife alone would be able to conduct this task. They did not do a very good job at this.
Right. So at some point, he, I guess, just goes back to Frisia. Meanwhile, however, the Franks are arguing. Charles wants to act immediately to go and put down this revolt that's happening in Dorestad or among the Frisians, whereas his father is like, maybe this was all a pretty bad idea. And also, maybe, we think that God told us to do this, but maybe it was just our pride and ambition. Because I guess he's an atheist too.
Yeah, which is weird.
Or at least a skeptic.
Yeah, but then later, Charles Martel seems to imply that his father did believe in God when he has that weird conversation with Redbad when he's like, oh, both of our fathers believed in God, but we've moved on from that. It was inconsistent.
It was. Redbad gets back home and everybody is oh my God, it's Redbad. It's so exciting.
Another one of these scenes where Redbad walks into, it doesn't walk into a room. He walks into a gate or a field, and all of a sudden everyone is really excited because everyone loves Redbad.
Redbad, you're going to fix everything. Everything. Yes. It's like the Lion King, right? Where they're in the middle of this whole of everything's gone to hell, and then Simba comes back, and they're all you're going to be in charge now. And he's I'm 12.
Coming to him and oh my gosh, Redbad. And then someone's like, oh, they think you just came back from Valhalla. And again, it's the sort of thing where everyone everyone else is portrayed as being sort of like silly, religion, superstitious. And then like Redbad is like, oh, but I'm of course this enlightened atheist who's just so much better than everyone else, when everyone else is quite religious.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
It's just Redbad, our cynical atheist from the 21st century. There to teach the religious
so
people how to do it. Fenna appears and I'm like, wait, she's not dead.
Like, oh my god, Fenna
back from Valhalla. Like, what, you think
else back from Valhalla?
Exactly, you think Redbad's back from Valhalla? Fenna's died twice, everybody.
And then we have the awkward, like, oh, I have to introduce my ex-girlfriend to my wife. So awkward.
So awkward.
Oh my god, all of these beautiful blonde women are in love with me. This must be so hard.
Yeah, because she's also like still very clearly into him, and he's also still very clearly into her. Like, and nothing actually happens, but he's like, yeah, like nothing happens, but he like is sort of like stroking her face.
Yeah, and she's also been married. Time. It's not like she was like sitting there pining for him. I mean, I think this is just more things in the movie that we're emphasizing that Redbad is just like this big masculine hero dude who all the women are in love with him and all the men respect him. That's just like part of how they're trying to portray him. But it didn't really make sense that everyone was just like, oh, Redbad.
To this like large blonde man with matted hair, and I'm like, to each their own.
To be honest, I feel like I went into this movie very ready to root for Redbad, and even I was not being brought along by this narrative.
I will have to admit that I was not coming into this movie ready to root for Redbad. I was coming into this movie thinking, why the fuck is this movie nearly 3 hours long?
I just got a reaction to seeing that running time. I was definitely feeling that about half an hour into this movie. I was like, is this a plot line? What's happening? Where are we going now? How is there still so much movie left?
At some point I paused it and went to get cake because I still have leftover birthday cake from since the time of recording. It's like nearish my birthday, which will not be when this gets released. I record very far in advance.
Well, I'm glad I have a lot of time before all your Dutch listeners get mad at me for mispronouncing people's names. Yeah,
I like get up and get a piece of cake, and then I go back and sit down. I'm like, I'm only halfway through. I've been watching this for ages.
Also, I think that when you don't have a clear sort of rising action, climax, falling action, it makes everything feel longer because you can't feel where you are in the narrative.
I have notes sitting in front of me, and I still don't remember. Like, I don't have in my head where this is in, like, how far into the movie we are.
Yeah, that's very fair.
We also have the reunion between Redbad and his cousin Jura, who also thinks he is amazing, but also Redbad is solidly 2 feet taller than him.
Yeah, and the cousin was another character who inexplicably super into Redbad.
Yeah, he's just like, oh my god, like, I don't have to be king, you can be king, just please like me.
Yeah, and I feel like if there was some level of character development, if we knew something about their past, or there was some change over time, that it could have been interesting, his relationship with these various members of the family, but it wasn't. Instead, we just have sort of weird blind adoration from the cousin, hatred from the uncle.
Right. I mean, that's the problem in general, right? Is that we know very little about the backstory of any of these characters. There's really very little work done to establish any relationships in a meaningful way. I don't know why his wife likes him so much.
Yeah, which makes it difficult to care about the characters and what they're going through.
I mean, I don't care about Redbad either. I mean, it's like everybody else likes him. And it feels like that's telling me that I should like him.
Yeah, and well, it is sort of using that as a placeholder.
Telling me, right?
Yeah, it's using that as a placeholder for actually giving him a personality or making him seem attractive to his audience. Instead of making him attractive, they're just saying everyone else finds him attractive, so you probably should too.
Right. It's like, well, everybody likes him. Why don't you like him?
Yeah, like, what's wrong with you? Do you not find this man incredibly hot?
He starts basically complaining about what happened with his sister. And also, it's great now, he's like very intensely defending Frisian customs and the righteousness of Frisian customs. I'm like, you mean like the human sacrifice ones?
Yeah, that was something that didn't really track in the movie in general. I mean, I guess maybe we're supposed to be like, oh, well, this is sort of a realization that you can sort of take some of your customs and leave others, but that's not really mentioned either. There's no sort of mention of we're going to get rid of the human sacrifices. It's him just sort of deciding, no, I need to like embrace my people and embrace my heritage and embrace my customs, despite being a weird, like, enlightened, modern thinking man for no reason.
And we never really talk about the human sacrifice again, right? I mean, it's not like he explicitly, it's not like we explicitly see him accepting it as a part of his people's culture, which again, at least would have been interesting. I'm not sure it would have been good, but it would have been interesting.
No, it would have been interesting. I mean, maybe we're supposed to assume that just because he's going to be king after this, he would no longer sacrifice people, but that's also not made clear. It's something like many things in this movie, it's not fully explained.
Right. It's this very odd switch. Like, it doesn't make sense to me how he switched from challenging customs and not necessarily thinking that a people's customs are that crucial, and that maybe if the customs are bad, it's okay to get rid of or change them. And he just switches from that to just this automatic, well, our customs are good and Christianity is bad because it threatens our customs. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't actually make sense with the person he was earlier in the movie.
No, it doesn't. And also, I think that this was something that sort of annoyed me, because then this like very dramatic scene later in the movie of his baptism isn't actually someone carefully considering the value of different religious faiths, which is what the story is actually supposed to be about. Instead this very just black and white thing of like, oh, well, because they're invaders, because they're against us, I have to do this to support my people and like protect our homeland.
Right. So then Charles Martel fucking murders his father.
Also, not only does he, okay, so there are a lot of problems with that. Problem number one is that the sort of idea that he's maybe not his father's heir is introduced very last minute. That should have been introduced way earlier in the story. Instead, all of a sudden it's like, oh, by the way, this person who seemed like the crown prince the whole time, not actually the crown prince. Yeah, surprise! No, surprise! Also, none of these people are actually kings or princes, though. They're all just like the mayors of the palace, which is also something the movie doesn't make clear. Though I guess to be fair, that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that they're in charge, and they are basically in charge. They just don't have the title as of yet. So it's fine.
So
I guess
that's fine, but for accuracy's sake. But anyway, just because I was saying crown prince, and I was like, wait, that's actually not true. But anyway, that's never introduced until right before he kills him, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh wait, there is this inheritance issue. Maybe you should kill not that you should kill your father, but all of a sudden there's a reason to do that, which never was really present before.
Right. And you have this clear, like, sense of conflict, I guess, a little bit earlier, in that they disagreed over what to do about the Frisians and about putting down the rebellion. But it kind of went from everything is basically fine to we're having a mild conflict to so I am going to poison you in what is actually not even subtle. Like, I'm like, how did you not see him pour something into your glass?
Yeah, and also an attendant or like royal official or someone just walks in right after he poisons him.
Yes.
And I guess is too intimidated to do anything.
And so that was just like, don't worry about it.
Yeah, unless like everyone in the sort of court really hated Pepin, that was sort of,
which I don't think there's any justification.
Yeah, no, it seems like everyone
certainly on reality
like, sort of knew that Martel just murdered him and was sort of like, well, such is life. And then he goes and murders the kid.
Well, but so before that, I want to remark on the line that he says as he's leaving, where he says again, because he's an atheist, I may not believe in heaven, but I know there's a hell and you will rot in it, which is kind of a cool line, except for the fact that it's an atheist like hanging out in the 8th, I can't remember where we are exactly on dates, late 7th, early 8th.
Also, I really don't think it makes sense for someone to be like, oh, I'm an atheist, I don't believe in heaven, but like you're going to hell. It's like you can't have your cake and eat it too, really.
No, okay, I will say it doesn't actually make sense, but I agree that it's like as an atheist, I actually do agree that while I have no interest in the idea, I have no interest in the idea of heaven. I don't find it interesting or compelling, but I find the idea of hell, I don't know if I believe in it, but I find it very compelling. Like, I want to believe that there is a hell for certain people.
Say that line to someone who you've just poisoned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely certain people that I want to believe will rot in hell.
Okay, yeah, no, I think you convinced me the way in which this could be a badass line.
Yeah, so so the line actually works for me, except for the context, that's fine. But also I'm just like watching this, and because I still cannot think of Jonathan Banks as anyone but Mike from Breaking Bad.
You're like Charles Martel Mike just from saying Breaking Bad, you're dying.
Right, and then Charles Martel's walking away saying this, I'm like, all right, Walter White.
Well, I'm glad that this movie was such a Breaking Bad experience for you. I mean, I think you probably would have had a better time if you just watched Breaking Bad, as would really anyone who watched Breaking Bad instead of seeing this movie. And I don't even think Breaking Bad is that good.
I really liked Breaking Bad when I was watching Breaking Bad, and then the more I think about Breaking Bad, the less it holds up in my mind.
That's how I feel about Breaking Bad as well. I sincerely enjoyed the experience of watching it. Then when I looked up what like any people in the fandom thought, I was horrified. And also I didn't like the ending. So I think I didn't like it as like a full experience later. But during watching Breaking Bad, like I also like devoured it as a show. So I clearly enjoyed
and it was an excellently acted show. Jonathan Banks is very good.
Yes. Well, I don't know. Is he the same person in every movie?
I mean,
we don't know yet.
We
only have a sample size of 2.
So he is at the very least very well cast. because his personality makes sense. As his character.
Now I really want to see like an interview with him. Is this man just like that in every?
Maybe. What's his name? Pepin Herstal. Like I'm like, what is his actual character's name?
Well, I think because you always want to call him Mike from Breaking Bad.
Yes, exactly. And in my notes, I actually didn't even. In my notes, I keep referring to him as JB for Jonathan Banks, so that's not helping either. Because he's the only actor that I know.
Naturally.
He's on his deathbed and is trying to tell the poor guy, he's trying to tell the bishop that Charles poisoned him. And the bishop's like, are you talking about God? I bet you're talking about God. Then he dies. We have his wife then pops up and says, I'm the mother. She actually does say, I'm the mother of the crown prince. And therefore she actually does use the word crown prince. So
okay, yeah. So then that wasn't my mistake. That was the film's mistake.
That was their mistake. Yeah.
Not a crown prince yet.
Right. So she says, I am the mother of the crown prince and therefore the regent of the empire. To which Charles basically just goes, nope, takes the ring off his father's finger and like grabs the kid.
Yeah, inexplicably, it seems like it's being portrayed that Martel just has complete control over the court.
Right.
And that was a little bit confusing to me, that everyone would just immediately like him and not be sort of upset that he very obviously just murdered their king, sort of.
And then, as you said, goes and murders this kid.
Yeah, also, that was one of those scenes where I'm like, why is this scene so long? Obviously, he's grabbing this kid to throw him off a balcony. Like, we all know it's about to happen. So why are we going to have this
drawn out?
Yeah, he, like, walks with the kid by hand. He, like, sings a little song. Like,
they tell
push
a
the kid off the
story.
balcony. Yeah, like, be done with it.
It's very lengthy, but it's also simultaneously, it's like, okay, we all know you're going to murder the kid. Everybody knows you're murdering the kid.
Also, the child had a great name. And it was Drogo. And I love that because it's like Popo. It's another one of these names that I understand that someone with that name will eventually become an adult, but it feels like it only really works as a name when they're a child.
Or if you are the Dothraki Call.
Oh, yeah.
Also a Drogo.
That's true. Yeah, I think I had forgotten his name.
So because that actually was what was in my head, I now have the opposite, that I just couldn't handle this.
You were like, why is this a tiny child? This makes no sense at all.
This like tiny helpless child is about to be murdered.
His name is like Khal Drogo as like a unit, not just the Drogo part. So I didn't have that association. But no, that does change things. That makes him much more intimidating. Tiny little pseudo crown prince.
You gotta kill him before he grows up.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly going to be a very intimidating man.
Exactly. Poor Drogo. So yeah, so Drogo dies. So then he goes to see Cinda, who, as she has for the last hour of this movie, it looks like she wants to die. And so she basically starts like stripping. It's a really upsetting scene because she strips and seems to be essentially like offering herself to him for sex, more or less consensually. And then he goes basically, no, I would rather rape you.
Yeah, that was a pretty uncomfortable scene to watch. I also thought it was a good example of the phenomenon of sort of like, I think that if you're going to have a scene of sexual violence in a movie, it's really important that you film it in such a way that it doesn't seem like it's meant to be sort of titillating. Yep. And this was definitely a scene that like, it was a sexy scene. Like you have a woman who's like stripping and like the camera is, like lingering on her body. Like it's a sexy scene, but it is a scene of sexual violence. And that's not how you should film a scene of sexual violence if you're going to have a scene of sexual violence in your movie.
Right, which I don't think we needed to at all. The scene really adds
Yeah, because also we already understand that Charles Martel is super not nice to his new wife. Like that was already established.
And we get that he sucks. We just saw him murder 2 people.
Yeah, and also I think that like it's already been established he's pretty terrible, murders multiple members of their family, and he's particularly terrible to her. We know that they're married. We didn't need a scene of sexual violence to like establish anything more. Like it does not add anything to anyone's character.
No. And as I said, this is the contrast that I wanted to make with that earlier scene, is that I find it really disturbing that the filmmakers made the choice that there's actually much more of the woman's body voyeuristically shown in the rape scene than in the consensual sex scene.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, especially because the consensual sex scene is in a lot of ways like a really sweet scene.
Yeah, no, that's
they've
actually
just
a
gotten
nice
married
scene.
And they're very like sincerely into each other. Inexplicably, this beautiful woman is in love with Redbad, but she is, very in love with him.
Right, and it's a nice scene, and that would have been a scene that, as far as like sex scenes in movies go, if it had shown a bit more, I don't think that would have been, a problem
and it's
or
also
anything.
sort of like him being accepted into this new community. Yeah. Like there's a lot of nice things going on in that scene. There are not any nice things going on in this other scene.
No, and I just find it odd that, as I said, that it's just like has to in this moment where she's being hurt and humiliated by her husband, that it almost seems like it's forcing the viewer to participate in that by the way it's exposing her body. It's very uncomfortable, and it's uncomfortable in a way that very much kind of makes me feel like I mean, it's very clear that they're kind of doing this in this really voyeuristic way, and it's fundamentally not about her.
Yeah, it's also not about her like at all in the larger narrative, and that it's about like her being hurt so Redbad can feel hurt. And we know nothing about her reaction to this event. We know nothing about her sort of feelings about anything later.
I am not even sure from this point on, I am not 100% sure we ever hear her speak again.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
I don't think we do.
We see her watching during Redbad's failed baptism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see her, but I don't think she ever says another
sitting
word.
There. So yeah, I think this was a particular low moment in choices made by the filmmakers.
Yes, it is. Back in Frisia, Fenna sends everybody to go and fetch Redbad to help them fight against the Franks. Redbad and the uncle exchange some dramatic looks, and they have a battle.
And this was one of the more epic battles, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, like he does a whole like tricky thing where he leads their cavalry away.
Yeah, and there's this bit where Charles is like, "Where's my dude?" And then Redbad shows up with the guy's head is like, "Looking for this."
Yeah, and I think this is one of the few moments, in contrast to all the terrible things about this movie, there's some like fun battle sequences. And I think that's an example of a fun battle sequence of like, oh, where's the leader of my cavalry? Oh, looking for this? I've cut off his head.
And that's the most I ever liked Redbad. I was like, that's a good move.
Holding a decapitated head. And Sarah thought, that's my man. I don't really understand why everyone's so into it, but I'm starting to at least get slightly more on board.
It's the line. It's that, and it's actually is well delivered. Because again, I don't think that the failure of Redbad's charisma is the actor's fault. But the way he kind of the way he like trots up with the head and raises it and goes looking for this. It's just like it's funny. It's kind of funny.
Yeah. There are a lot of scenes where they're just sort of waiting during battle. And that was a little confusing to me because I'm not sure that battles have quite that much like, oh, we can all see the enemy, but we have to wait for something now.
Right. We have a big battle. We also at some point have just like this weird flashback of like Redbad as a child wandering around the battlefield.
Yeah, okay. So that was another of my big questions about this movie where I was wondering whether this is one of those movies where it made me question my own intelligence slightly because I was like, am I just dumb? Am I missing something? Because so the context is we're having a battle and then it switches to him, I think as a child, as a tiny blonde child, and he's like in a field of dead bodies.
Yes.
So what does this mean? Because I think it could mean a lot of things.
I don't know.
Also, like, I think in context it's supposed to be him because of the other scenes like this, but it could also be a vision of his son. So there are a lot of options, and it's not at all made clear what's going on.
Okay, is it supposed to be him as a child on the current battlefield, or is it him as a child on a battlefield that he saw or experienced when he was a child?
I have no idea. And also, I am 100% sure that there is an idea in that, like, the person who made that
I'm sure, yes.
thought, like, oh, this is, like, this deep symbolism. But no one's understanding your symbolism. Whoever created this scene, who I'm sure will watch this podcast and really value my opinion.
They're not succeeding in making their message clear. We increasingly have now the bit where everybody just tries to convince Redbad that he is the best and that he should be king. The seer is pushing him, Freya is pushing him, and we also now start to get the inclusion semi-meaningfully in the plot of the fact that she is a Christian, by which I mean like they have a couple of conversations about it, that she's sort of concerned that somebody will be upset if they find out. They spend a little time talking about Jesus. She goes and chats to a priest and then tells the priest, like, that's her big drowning moment. She's like, my husband's not a Christian. Also, my husband is Redbad.
That's a kind of fun, dramatic moment. But yeah, so
Is that Boniface?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
so that's Boniface. One thing that I thought was rather confusing about that is that seems to be portrayed as sort of like, okay, so you have Freya and Boniface who are having this sort of nice conversation about how baptism maybe shouldn't be forced on people, and also how things should be done peacefully. And then after that, you have Boniface talking to Willibrord, and Willibrord being like, no, the only language that these people understand is violence. And you also have Freya talking to Redbad, and Redbad essentially telling her the same thing, like, violence is the only way. So then you have these two things being put against each other, like, oh, negotiation or violence. But the conclusion of the movie ultimately seems to be that violence is the right answer.
I mean, we have both the hero and one of the villains speaking in favor of that message. And so it's, okay, so I guess that's it. I guess we should just have a coup on the Capitol.
Yeah, I mean, that is a message that I think someone could take from this.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting a real white supremacist vibe off this movie.
Yeah, I mean, and so I think that is something that's in this movie that I personally didn't see at first, but definitely was in other people's reactions to it. Like, I read sort of news articles about this movie that seemed to indicate that that was an idea in people's mind, that this movie could be used as, particularly in the Dutch context of like Dutch right-wing political propaganda.
Yeah.
So that's great. And also, I think also a part of that is this sort of, oh, Redbad doesn't believe in sort of like religion, but he does have this sort of love for his fatherland and a love for their native customs.
He believes in tradition. He believes in essentially keeping things the way they are and not accepting a change from external forces and from people who aren't part of your, apparently, according to this movie, ethnic group.
And I think also specifically in the Dutch context, there is this sort of rhetoric of, oh, we need to keep these innate values of freedom from being corrupted by religious extremists in the form of immigrants from the Islamic world. So I think that also could be, and I mean, to be fair, who knows if that was the intention of the person who made this movie, but it certainly could be taken that way in a sort of political climate of, we have sort of like native customs of freedom, as opposed to people who are sort of coming in and bringing their extremely religious way of life and need to be kept from coming into our country.
And the juxtaposition of that with this narrative of actually the sword is the only way and violence is the only way to accomplish our goals.
The only way to protect the land of our forefathers.
Yep, it's very disturbing. Couple additional notes. First of all, so I watched this movie on like Amazon via IMDb TV or something like that.
I did too. Did you have to watch commercials with it?
I did. And there's this bit where Cinda is doing some like intense, angry praying kind of thing. And it goes straight from that into like this like extremely brightly colored Oreos ad.
Yeah. So I had this experience watching this as well. Of like because this is a movie with a lot of very dramatic scenes.
Yes.
And so there's sort of like high drama and high emotion, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's a silly commercial. But actually, that is one of the things that kind of bothered me about the movie, was a sort of sense of high drama and high emotion when you don't really, I mean, we've said this a million times before already, but when you don't actually know a lot about the characters or care about them, but it feels very artificial. Like everything is so
It's a lot of drama
dramatic.
With not a lot of emotional investment.
Yes, exactly. Which makes it hard to care about the high drama. But, lots of dramatic moments.
Right. The priest is trying to convince Willibrord to not suck so much, which he is not up for, but he is up for giving him what I refer to as a Voldemort hug, because his weird hug with his cape, it totally looks like Voldemort hugging.
Yeah, Draco, and also Boniface seemed to like not super into the hug as well.
Yeah, so he has a good Voldemort hug, and goes to chop down the sacred oak, and says basically like, why isn't your god striking me down to the thunderbolt if he cares so much about your tree? And also does actually, it's that this person is supposed to be the villain, and he is, like, he's torturing people. Clearly he's bad, but also he's the one who says, you could not sacrifice people. Like, Jesus sacrificed himself, and I'm like, this movie, like, I'm sorry, are you trying to make me feel bad for Christianity?
It did, and also the message that the movie had about religion in general, I found kind of
Right.
confusing. In that, to me,
Yes.
it seemed to be saying more just religious belief in general is bad, since you have both
Right.
sacrifices and these super violent Christians, but then also you have Redbad sort of defending the customs of his people in the end. So I think it's ambiguous what it's trying to say about religion, but definitely it's not saying something good about religion overall.
I personally would use the term muddled as opposed to ambiguous
Muddled.
because
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
I
sure
like
that there's
This
a
is
clear
muddled message.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a clear thing that it's saying that it is getting across. Like, I don't think it's a complicated message that's expressed in nuanced ways. I think they're just not doing a good job to clarify. Anyway, the seeress shows up and she fucking murders a dude, but then she is killed before she can kill the bishop, which is sad.
Yeah, but I mean, Edwina has her like great moment. Yeah, wait, so but this means we missed the scene though of Edwina showing. Oh, this must have been in all of the scenes of like women supporting Redbad.
Yes,
but one of the scenes of women supporting Redbad is her explaining how eclipses work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which will be relevant.
Which will be important later.
Because it's actually, I will say honestly, is one of those things that it comes up later and then it's important. And then I'm like, oh, right, I guess that was the thing earlier and they explained it, whatever. At the time, my brain was just like, all right, whatever, they're talking about astrology or something. I don't care.
Yeah, well, the thing is, because the movie is not very tight in terms of plot, you don't know what to pay attention to. Because there are a lot of scenes that don't matter at all and never come up again. So how would you know that that scene would actually tie into something later?
Yeah, it's Chekhov's eclipse, obviously.
Obviously.
There's this big confrontation at the tree. Redbad, Freya, and it turns out Fenna end up basically agreeing to be captured in exchange for they'll allegedly let other people go. I just love that Fenna's like coming along
is inexplicably involved because Fenna is inexplicably super into Redbad.
And what do you think Fenna's husband thinks that his wife is just like, so I'm gonna just be captured with my ex-boyfriend?
I want to hang out with Redbad more.
Like,
yeah, well, I mean, we in never captivity, see her husband, so
we saw him one time that she introduced him. I think his name was Wolf.
Yeah, good strong name.
Yeah, she introduced him, but we saw him that one time. I don't think we ever see him again, though I can't promise we don't see him in any of the battle scenes because the men also all look alike, to be fair.
That is fair. A lot of very long hair and beards and braids. Yeah. Lots of very sort of fashionable undercuts.
Yep, they've really got a look. It's a little bit Viking, a little bit Nazi.
Yeah. I mean, I think that might be what they're going for with their iconography.
It just might, they just might. So they have the baby in prison.
Again, the baby is always where the baby shouldn't be. Also, there's that weird moment in the prison transport where Freya asks Fenna, like, oh, it's also weird because it's right after they were talking about Jesus. And then all of a sudden the conversation just takes a left turn and she's like, oh, are you still in love with Redbad?
Right?
Which is weird because I'm like, we don't need to say that. Like, that's already been established. Clearly she's still in love with Redbad. And also this just seems weird in the context of you were just having this sort of like religious conversation.
Right. It's like, so we finished up the religion conversation. Now I guess we'll have a conversation about how you want to fuck my husband.
So Jesus loves all of us and he died for our sins. By the way, do you love my husband? I was confused at that moment, but
seems like the kind of thing that would happen on like the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, where they're like trying to like talking about Mormonism, and then all of a sudden it's like, and did you sleep with my husband?
Yeah. No, it was a weird moment of gossip, and also like, well, we don't need that established. We all know she's in love with Redbad.
We don't need the additional like narrative of this. Like we got it.
Yeah. There are many things in this movie that did need additional narrative to explain further. This was not one.
Did not get them. Oh no. Charles shows up and is being a real asshole about the baby and also about how he and Redbad are atheist buddies.
No, I mean, I think Martel should also be put in the category of people who are inexplicably kind of into Redbad. Like,
yes,
it's definitely like portrayed as he thinks Redbad is cool in the sort of sense of like Redbad is the man who all the women love and all the men respect. Inexplicably, Martel is like, you and me, buddy, mortal enemies, but like we're on the same wavelength. We both don't believe in God. All the dumb people do, but we're above that.
I wrote down this whole line. We have to give the people what they want. Nice fairy tales about heroes and dark tales about God. Our fathers believe that, but we don't. Let's keep that a secret. Let's keep that a secret between you and me,
Just
Red.
our little secret. Also, I think this is the scene where maybe there was a deleted scene where they like proposed some sort of alliance. Because I think that would have made a lot more sense.
In terms of what happens later, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and instead we don't, but we have, so the implication actually, I think, is just that Redbad agrees to get baptized because otherwise they're going to kill his wife and kid.
Which, like, fair. That's a,
that's
pretty
fine.
Strong incentive.
Fair enough. He goes to get baptized.
We get more waterboarding.
More waterboarding baptism. We get a little flashback or at least like a voiceover where he recalls his father talking about how tradition is great even when it involves human sacrifice.
Yes, it's not about you, it's not about me, it's about our people and the interests of our nation.
Our nation of the our 7th century nation.
Yeah.
The language nation.
Yeah.
And this is where we get the one really good speech from Redbad, which of course is really good because it's the one lifted from medieval texts.
Exactly. Also,
where
I think this is a really lovely moment in a medieval text, which is really different here. Because in the actual medieval text, it is someone carefully considering the implications of conversion and what religion would mean for them. But here, it's just about him like rebelling in a military way against sort of an oppressor.
Right.
Which is like a compelling story, but it's very different than someone seriously considering the implications of conversion.
Yeah, and it feels very out of place in some ways, especially because you have the very clear sense that he's only being baptized out of coercion, right? That
and like he's not actually seriously considering those questions in that moment.
No, and so it's this. It makes the whole line, the whole set of lines, seem very performative. It's that he's not doing it because, in the context, it struck me as he's not doing it because he's grappling with these questions. He's doing it to make a point to the other Frisians to rally them to rebel, which I don't think is the best use of that speech and is not the position that it has in the original text. So to get to tell people what the speech is that he starts asking about what's going to happen to his ancestors. He starts basically like yelling out the names of like cool people, which adds a lot to the again performative nature of this scene, that he's trying to get other people to think about this and rebel
rallying
with him.
The other Frisians.
Yeah, by yelling out the names of people who I assume are great dead Frisians.
Yeah, great forefathers of the Frisian nation.
And then says, I would rather be in hell with my friends than in heaven with my enemies. And somebody throws him a sword and they start
It's a great line.
Yeah,
it's
a
great line. It was just not a good use of this amazing bit of dialogue.
Right, yeah, because especially because it is just this issue again, right? It's a really interesting line in a context of him maybe thinking seriously about baptism and what that means in a religious sense, but there's nothing in the film to say that he ever has thought about that because he's just an atheist.
Because he's never actually believed in anything.
Right, like he doesn't actually believe that there is a heaven or hell that his dad is or isn't in.
No, he's just saying these things in order to rally his people, which he does do successfully.
They have a battle again. His cousin dies.
And then dramatically, his cousin dies, except it's not actually that dramatic because no one's formed a sort of emotional relationship with this character. But it happens.
There's also this little torque thing that I think Redbad had that he brought with him, strapped onto him when he was lashed to the thing.
Yeah, the little royal brooch.
Right. And it's this little kind of like leitmotif where it's like he thinks he's lost it and his wife actually had it the whole time and she gives it back to him. And then when he comes back, he and his cousin are kind of passing it back and forth. And then again, while the cousin is dying, they pass it back and forth and finally say, this it belongs to us. And then Jura dies.
Yeah, which I think could have been a really great moment if we really cared about Jura and his relationship to Redbad.
The scene itself, actually, I think is fairly touching. I think there's a little almost comedic element with the amount of times that they pass the little brooch back and forth. I think it doesn't 100% succeed as a scene because of that. I think they should have cut out at least one of the passages where, back and forth.
You're starting to check how many minutes are left in the movie because we've
also got to that point like 45 minutes ago.
We've passed the most famous scene in Redbad's life. So we know the movie can sort of end soon now. We have had the baptism scene, but we're like, when is it going to end?
Because then, so everybody kneels before Redbad, at which point I pause the movie, say, I have 20 minutes of this.
Yeah, and also that's another of these like big high drama scenes, because he's also still in his sort of baptismal uniform. He's like all wet, wearing a white shirt, and there's kind of like a light shining
like white,
on him.
except there's like some tasteful bits of blood, and he's got a sword.
Yeah, it's like weirdly sort of like I am a holy.
It's sort of Jesus-y, which is funny.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, which is very weird since he's just like rejected Christianity. But
and it's again the kind of messiness of this film in a lot of ways, right? Is that he is literally in the process of rejecting Christianity, and yet they're still appropriating the symbolism of like a Christ figure, which of course, like, because, you know, I mean, now all these Frisians are watching this movie are Christians, I get, right? All the people watching this movie are, all of your Dutch conservatives are technically, I assume, as much Christian as they are anything.
I think probably they're much more like secular than the sort of like brand of conservatism we have in the US.
Right.
But like,
and they're probably like Christianish, right?
Yeah. That's sort of like nominal Christianity of it's very much in the water of your culture, but you don't probably have like a personal relationship with God.
Right. And so this is symbolism that still I
imagine symbolism that still like carries a lot of weight. And
it's still
even
evocative.
if they didn't even recognize it as Christian, they would be like, this is symbolism. Makes me feel like this is an important person.
Which, I mean, because it is very familiar to almost everybody. Fun fact, my mother, who grew up in an Orthodox Jewish context, like genuinely did not understand Christ figures in literature, and like did not get any of those references until like college, including that like she was shocked that Aslan is Jesus.
That's such an interesting thing, because I think there are a lot of things that you, especially if you grow up sort of being like culturally Christian, or if you grow up sort of in culture, you sort of get all these Christian tropes and imagery, and you sometimes don't even really know they're necessarily Christian, but you know that they're a thing. Right. Because I think a lot of Christian kids maybe weren't like, this is the Jesus figure, but they like still sort of understood that this was something important, that this was a figure. But it's like Christianity is so much sort of in the water. Right,
exactly. And then even to be as a atheist Jew, it very much, it very much has something of a kind of evocativeness. So of course, I'm also a medievalist who spends a lot of time.
Yeah, that was what I was about to say. You also have like
Christianity, but
time very affected by Christianity, but
So I'm probably not a good example, but whatever. So then they see the eclipse, Chekhov's eclipse.
Oh, right. Okay. This was actually a great scene of this like dramatic final battle where like the eclipse happens and everyone's freaking out, and Willibrord is like getting on the ground and like pressing his head against the dirt because he's all afraid of God smiting him.
And Redbad has very much the presence of mind to make his speech about how maybe it's an omen, even if it is, it doesn't matter. What matters is that they're free and they're doing this whole war thing. It's a slightly better speech than I'm giving it credit for with that summary.
Live free, die free kind of thing. Of like, oh, like we lived our lives free, so now we're gonna die that way. But we won't let anyone tell us how to live our lives or what to believe. It's like, this is the land of free people, bow to no one.
And again, I'm just watching this and I'm like, so you are raw human sacrifice after this is over.
That is a thread that's like very distinctly dropped.
Yes, they don't want to have to be the person who's defending human sacrifice.
Yeah, because I think especially given his sort of like reputation as this like Frisian hero, he has to be in this role of like, I'm defending the customs and traditions of my people, which then kind of makes me wonder, why did we introduce the human sacrifice?
That's such a good question.
We could have left that out, especially because I mean, actually, there's like some
we don't need the exile in the first place.
There's like not evidence that everyone sacrificed humans or they did it very often.
No.
There's sort of more like vague references to it. Really, we don't need them sacrificing humans. Sorry.
And narrative. Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, and narratively, the only thing that it does is it puts him in this position, right, where he gets in trouble and gets exiled. As we'll talk about in a bit, that I don't think is a thing that really happened.
No.
So
and I mean, that must be drawing on sort of other narratives of kind of like the like prodigal son returning, sort of.
Yeah, and it's very kind of hero's journey. It's Moses.
Yeah, because I feel like that must be what's causing that, because I don't think there's anything in like actual history that would need that to happen.
Certainly not, for Redbad specific. It's the Lion King is actually what it is. It's just the Lion King.
We just watched a worse version of the Lion King.
We did. A worse version that's twice as long.
I realized this before. Okay, but we do need to talk about the most important thing about this battle.
Which is the pigs.
Yes, it is that they set pigs on fire and then they let the pigs run. And that is both brilliant and also, I think, visually impressive. I was a big fan of that. They still haven't learned how to animate fire, which is a problem.
No.
They also have flaming bales of hay.
Right.
There were like, yeah, these flaming bales of hay that they're sending in. So they're, again, cool things with fire. Should probably learn how to animate fire.
Yes. That is a cool scene. Then, so we're in the battle. We have like a kind of keep away with the baby who is in the middle of the war.
Oh no, it's a
Poor baby.
Also, funnily enough, I wrote down in my notes that Fenna's husband dies. I don't remember that happening.
Yes. Thank you.
But I guess
I
Wolf
wrote down.
dies. I wrote it down.
So what I wrote down is someone, maybe Fenna's husband, question mark, gets killed. That's what I had in my notes.
So clearly he did not make a very big impression as a character, is what I'm getting.
Seen him once.
Yeah, poor Wolf.
Yeah. The battles overall, I would say, are visually mostly in a lot of ways fairly well done, with the exception of the sword fight on horseback between Redbad and Charles, which is atrociously choreographed.
Yeah, that was bad. Though I also think it's bad in general, the amount of like standing in a line and watching the other people standing in a line.
Right. Yeah.
Like I'm
true.
sure that has happened at one point in a battle, but there was a lot of it in this movie in general.
I mean, it's one of the many ways in which this movie could have, I think, with some thought, cut like an hour. Is that you could just have cut a lot of the lingering shots
and I think
of the
actually
battle
would have
lines.
drastically improved the movie, because this movie being too long was really doing it no favors.
Oh no, it was not.
Yeah. We have the best line from Charles Martel in this scene.
Oh yes.
Where he turns to Redbad and says, "Together we could have ruled the world." Which is so dramatic and also
from
confusing.
nowhere.
Yeah. And I do maintain that maybe there was a deleted scene that made this make more sense, because we have to assume
where
that
they
like
implied some kind of alliance.
Yeah, but I don't think that was established well enough, and it made what was otherwise a really cool line just make me say like, wait, what?
Right, because it's very much like Redbad, why don't you want to be my friend? No, don't be my friend. I think
like everyone else in this movie, Charles Martel is inexplicably really into Redbad.
As you do. It's just he's so tall and bearded and blonde.
Yeah, you just see him and you're like, that guy. Just want to follow in the battle.
Cindy's just sitting there kind of watching, and just the look on her face is just basically like, I want all of these people to die, which good for her. I just wish that we'd actually like heard her
I think I was right
time.
there with her by the end of the movie. The dress she's wearing. This is another one of Cinda's dresses that I think you could wear in a modern context, because I think they think that a dress is a dress. 8th century dress, 21st century dress, probably the same.
And I will say, and I will say something in favor of the actress whose name I obviously don't remember, who plays Cinda, which is that the rating of this character is atrocious in that the way in which they like rape her and then basically make her a non-character is awful.
That's bad.
But I will say in favor of the actress that she has a very expressive face that I think she makes good use of in all of the remaining scenes that she's in. That I think it's a travesty that she's not given any lines, but I think she, with the nothing that she's given, does a lot.
I think we can contrast that with Redbad, who's also given nothing, but doesn't do a lot with his nothing. And again, it must be really hard to be given nothing as a character, but Redbad has a lot of scenes of the camera just like lingering on his face. He's staring off into space. He's having deep thoughts. And he's
just very stoic.
Yeah, maybe that's what he was going for, and that's why his face always shows no emotion. But it's not.
It's not helping with us trying to believe in Redbad as this charismatic figure that everybody's really into.
Or like
because again, I just don't
feeling,
get it.
or what he's going through, or why everyone is super into him and wants to be his best friend / lover,
and die for him and his dumb kid Papa.
Oh right. Oh, poor Fenna. Yeah. I mean,
so I spent this
it was
entire
a
movie expecting Fenna to die,
and you got what you suspected.
And I finally got it.
Fenna's whole role, and really the role of like all women, is just sort of like supporting Redbad. So of course she would sacrifice herself for their family. Also, like that scene was not constructed in a way where it really made sense why she needed to like jump in front of that arrow.
No, it was
like
not.
That also just didn't seem like that was the only option there. And it was very like everyone stop and look and wait so someone can get in front of the arrow so we can have a dramatic death scene.
And she dies to save, I guess, Freya and the child.
Yeah. Popo.
Which, man, that you have to have like, it's just so frustrating, right? That she like has to die to save the man. Because, okay, she has to die to save the man. But she can't actually die to save him because then his masculinity would be undermined.
Yeah,
The woman actually had to save him. So instead she has to die to save his wife and infant child.
Yeah. Which also, like, wasn't there something earlier about how, like, she couldn't give him a child?
That was a one line that came out of nowhere and then it was never returned to, yes.
And also is actively confusing, because does that imply that they had been, like, trying to have a kid before they were married? Or does it imply that she just happens to know that she can't have children? It's very unclear.
Yes, it is.
But that also does add, like, another weird and kind of uncomfortable layer to it, that she's sort of dying to save his child when she couldn't give him a child, and she's somehow been, like, thinking about that for years. Because it underlines
she's been
the fact
thinking
that
about this guy for years in general is just a whole lot.
Yeah, and it really, like, I think drives home this point that her entire purpose would have been to, like, give him a child. But she can't do that, so she'll die to save his actual child.
Great. Just great.
Yeah.
Carmen agrees. The priest seems sad. They build some funeral pyres. There are some dramatic looks, and then the movie, it just ends very abruptly.
Yeah, can we talk about the text that's on the screen after the movie ends?
I'll be honest, you'll have to tell me what it is, because I might have
Okay, no, I'll tell you. I wrote it down because I was annoyed. Okay, so it doesn't start off bad. The first one is, Redbad's people stayed free and independent until his death. Okay, then it talks about how Boniface was murdered in 754 in Frisian territory, but then, like, they're like, strongly imply that, oh, we don't really know why it happened, but clearly it was part of a Frisian rebellion.
Don't worry about it.
Blah. And then it says Redbad was banned from history books by Christian historians, while Willibrord and Boniface are still honored as saints. So,
for God's sake.
Which I feel like is especially bullshit, because, like, it's mostly through Christian sources that we know about Redbad.
Yes.
I think maybe, like, entirely through Christian sources. So, like, that's literally
that's where the story about his baptism is, right? It's in the Vita of Willibrord.
Yeah, it's from a saint's life. So it's actively ridiculous. I mean, that would be actively ridiculous to say about really any medieval figure that any of us have heard of.
If we've heard of him, he wasn't banned from the history books.
Yeah, if we heard about him particularly, it was probably Christian historians. So I think there are so many things that you could complain about,
right?
You know, Christianity in the early medieval period.
Of course.
Lots of complaints one could make, but Redbad being banned from the history books by Christian historians is actively ridiculous.
There is honestly nothing that I resent more than that this movie has made me defend Christians and Christianity.
Yeah. No, it was impressive that the movie was capable of that.
Right? I really resent it.
Yeah, because to be honest, like, even I was sort of going into this movie with, like, oh, like, it's kind of nice that the idea that they were, like, portraying the Frankish conquests as being this sort of, like, violent thing, and that there were people rebelling and people who, you know, didn't want to convert to Christianity. I was like, oh, that's cool that a movie did that, because that really doesn't happen in movies about the Middle Ages. And I think we do kind of brush over the violence in spreading Christianity. So that's a lovely thing to have in a movie. But this movie did not do this in a, you know, historically accurate way.
No, it did not.
And in some way, I think it does kind of, like, erode your point when you do it in a bad way. Because I think that
that the sensationalism undermines the reality of it, right? That if they'd actually had a historically accurate portrayal, I think it could have been very powerful. But that the sensationalism and the kind of bizarre way in which it's done makes you
baptism by
dismiss it
waterboarding.
Right, it just makes you dismiss it as ridiculous because the way it's portrayed it is. That really does, undermine the ways in which you could have used this to kind of actually think through, like, think critically about the spread of Christianity.
Yeah, because I think, like, this is a movie that someone could watch and then be like, oh, this is kind of ridiculous, and then come to the assumption, like, well, the idea that Christianity was spread through violence is also ridiculous, because you've only seen it in a ridiculous context.
This can now lead into our next segment, the Vegra et Falso, where we talk about what they got right and what they got wrong in this film. So first there's the visual culture aspects, where the Frisians look like they're in the 5th century.
Yeah, so actually, this might have not been the Frisians, this might have been the Danes, but there's some scenes that they're shot in a prehistoric village, like a place where people reenact prehistoric life. And, like, maybe they tried to move it forward in time with some of the things they added, but I think just that fact alone is a problem when you're contrasting it with other scenes that are shot in, like, late medieval castles.
Right, yeah. The castle is, I don't know the exact date, but it's 12th century at the absolute earliest.
Yes. Yeah.
The castle is late. The armor that the Franks are wearing looks 14th century, I would say.
Yeah, and also like
Um,
all of their like sort of giant banners with the cross and like their uniform with the cross.
Right.
Very
Yeah,
kinda, like,
they're dressed like
Knights Templar-esque.
crusaders. Right. Yeah, they're sort of dressed like
Yeah.
crusaders. We have a crucifix that I cannot emphasize enough how aggressively not 8th century it is. It is very 13th, 14th century. We have this Byzantine icon that, again, 12th century absolute earliest. It's just a mess.
Yeah, and also I think it's one of those things where they clearly really wanted to demonstrate that the Frisians and the Danes are very separate than the Franks and use visual cues to do that. Number one, that probably wouldn't have been true, that they wouldn't have looked super visually different. And number two, they're making them visually different by just wildly time period sliding.
And also one of the things I wanted to add to this is the portrayal of Dorstad, which looks like this basically, I'm trying to think of how to describe it in terms of how it's portrayed in the film. Like it's a sort of like river settlement, kind of like there's clearly a decent amount of people there, but there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of infrastructure. There doesn't seem to be a lot going on. The real Dorstad in this period is a real commercial center that has a textile industry, not like a glorified hut.
Yeah, and that's definitely not what we were being shown in this movie.
Right. Yeah, so that's also very frustrating again, is that they're in this effort to heighten the contrast. They basically send the Frisians back to the best case scenario, like Roman period.
Now that I'm thinking about this more, I think this makes it in some ways more uncomfortable, because then it's sort of this weird like colonizer thing that you have this sort of idea of like, oh, you have this like these primitive people, but they're free. And then you have the sort of the people who are coming in with this like more advanced civilization, heavily in quotes, coming in, but to like put them under their control. So that's sort of a weird dynamic.
Yeah. And then of course also add to that the fact that then it's like, then we have that narrative being used in the service of a bunch of white people protesting against a bunch of brown immigrants.
Yeah. So that's really just all kinds
of countries colonized by Europe at various points.
I mean, they just need to protect themselves from religious extremism, Sarah. They just need to protect their native local customs of freedom, which are really innate to the area. I hope I'm not like offending some Dutch people, but I do think that is part of Dutch right-wing politics.
Yeah, right.
And an example of this, when I was in Flanders, I got a flyer in the mail from like a Flemish far-right party. Mm-hmm. And one thing that sort of surprised me on like this flyer, they had a couple that were two women. And I was like, oh, that's like not something that tracks with like American far-right politics. And so I asked a Flemish friend about it, and she told me like, oh, no. A lot of Flemish far-right parties have this sort of idea that being sort of very accepting and tolerant is actually a part of our sort of like native traditions. And it's only because of like outside influence. And that's actually a reason why we have to be so worried about Islamic immigration, is because they're going to bring in these sort of like ideas of intolerance. So we got to be,
intolerant.
Yeah, so we got to be intolerant towards them. But I do think that is something that was sort of feeding into this movie, this idea of like, oh, we have these natural traditions of freedom. But hopefully some Dutch person doesn't watch this and be like, you know nothing about Dutch politics, because I probably don't. But
Yes, that was interesting. I also want to talk about the Frisian religious customs a bit. In terms of the human sacrifice angle, so it is at least the case based on what we know that in general, these Germanic polytheistic cultures, I think we've at this point pretty much come down on the side that they had at least occasional human sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, I think also though it's the kind of thing where the amount that they did it is a little bit unclear. Right. And also, I will say, I am of the belief that it is very hard to distinguish between human sacrifice and an execution, like a judicial execution.
Right.
And that those things not only can look very similar, but they're actually very conceptually similar. Like the idea that in order to reassert order in your society, you need to kill someone. And you as a group or high-ranking individuals in your group have decided this is the person you need to kill. So I think sometimes when we talk about human sacrifice, we should acknowledge that like there is a vague line between a sacrifice and an execution sometimes.
And, and in general, so like a lot of the evidence that I would say is actually trustworthy, because there's a lot of good reason to be very critical of the Christian accounts of what this looked like. And the archaeological evidence is very much, subject to interpretation in a lot of ways. However, based on what we do know, to the extent that there was human sacrifice, it's not exclusively of women. In fact, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, the most dramatic, and this is again a Christian source, but the most dramatic account actually that we have of, I think it's actually on like Norse pagan human sacrifice, but like it's actually exclusively men. It's like men and male animals.
That would make sense just from a like sort of more practical perspective of who would be important for sort of reproduction for your society. Yeah, and I think specifically example in this movie where it's specifically young women of, you know, marriageable age, since Redbad really wanted to marry one of them. That seems, and like, you know, again, we don't know a whole lot about what was kind of human sacrifices happening in these cultures, but it seems like that would not be who they would choose. They would not be like, oh, all of our young women who are about to get married, kill half of them. That seems like not the choice.
Right, yeah, and because the narrative that actually I am familiar with in terms of, and this is again a Viking situation, but of like a woman human sacrifice, it's in Ahmed ibn Fadlan's account of the Volga Vikings, and that's an enslaved woman. Which is obviously awful, but like very much kind of changes the
but it is different
from the perspective of that society's beliefs, right? So it's a bizarre choice.
There's an account in the Life of Saint Wolfram that describes someone getting tied to a raft and getting set adrift. So
okay, so we do have
incorporated that. I mean, I honestly
nice.
don't know if they knew about that and whether they just accidentally got, given the lack of historical accuracy about everything else.
Right.
Maybe they just got lucky, but there is an account of how people would set people adrift.
Yeah, I bet they read that.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's
so
cool.
maybe they could have kept that.
Right, and the Seeresses are actually a legit thing, that they have these Seeres figures, that this is like a real thing that shows up, which is cool. Like, I like Edwina.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe they did do like some level of research. They just didn't incorporate all of it.
I think they kind of did, but then they decided they didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, also, while we're still talking about religion, I know we don't know a lot about like specifically Frisian religion, but it seems like they were just incorporating religious figures from other places. In that we have like Woden and we have Freya, and we also have specifically with the tree, they describe it as like being Donar. And that is a specific narrative, but it takes place in Saxony. And it's from the life of Saint Boniface, not the life of Saint Willibrord, who it's being portrayed as being about Willibrord. It also takes place in Saxony. So it was presumably not a god that was being worshipped in Frisia either.
Right. So they're kind of pulling things from a lot of places. There were a couple of articles that I came across that were arguing for there being some similarities and connections between a bunch of these kind of Germanic polytheistic cultures, that there were to some extent kind of sharings of deities and practices. This film, I think, very much took that in the direction of anything from anywhere can apply here. But that is at least a decision that in a film where you have to fill things in, I find also a little bit more understandable.
Yeah. And to be fair, I think if you don't know the sort of names of local old Frisian gods, then maybe it makes sense to just sort of fill in, like these are names of other gods from areas that were nearish by.
Yeah, and they're obviously names that then are very familiar to people because there's a decent amount of familiarity with Norse mythology. And so, as I said, I think based on the little we do know, it, as I said, especially for a film where you have to fill in some details, it doesn't not make sense as a choice.
Yeah.
Unlike there's, the waterboarding baptism, which does not make sense as a choice, as we have discussed.
Yeah, which was very visually impressive, but not great for other reasons, perhaps.
Right. I also did a little reading on flaming pigs.
Oh, wait, tell me about the flaming pigs.
Okay, so interestingly, so I'm watching this and I'm like, this is just ridiculous, right? But
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it sounds like a great idea, Sarah.
But I'll admit, I definitely watched this and I was like, there's no way this is ever a real thing. It does seem, as far as I can tell from some fairly cursory research, to be something that is actually attested in Roman sources.
I mean, I think it sounds like a great idea. So I can see why someone would want to do that, because also it just is introducing so much confusion into the battlefield.
Yeah.
I think actually flaming pigs are something that, like war elephants, they're most effective the first time they're used, and they become less effective the more you use them.
So interesting that you mentioned the war elephants, because the war pigs, at least allegedly, were basically used to combat the war elephants.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I think my favorite characters in all of this were just the animals. Even when they were on fire, they were
that
great.
Seems fair. Yeah, that definitely seems fair.
The flaming
But yeah,
pigs
that
were
they
much more
were
charismatic than Redbad.
right. But yeah, but that they were actually supposed to be like specifically like something you
I
bring
think
in
you
to
and I
fight
would
off
really
the war
upset an
elephants.
elephant. Like an elephant
Yeah.
would definitely freak out if a flaming pig were
Oh
running
yeah.
around its feet.
Absolutely. You know, worth knowing that I don't think there's any justification as far as I could find for them appearing in this specific context. There isn't anything I could find about them being used at any point in the Frankish-Frisian Wars, but they are something that can be found in pre-modern history.
And it was a fun thing to see in the movie.
Yeah, and it's clearly, there's a lot of moments where it's just clearly like somebody did some reading and then incorporated some things from it that they found interesting. And actually, Pepin of Herstal and Charles Martel are a really interesting example of this.
So my impression of the historical figures in this were that they just took a lot of names that are attested to,
Yes.
and we do know all of these people. Like, I think actually a huge number of the named characters, like on the Frisian side, we have Aldechisel, we have Redbad, we have Popo, all real people. And we have Wilford, we have Boniface, Pepin, Martel. So we took these names. Did we create
simplify
stories
a lot, right? And we simplify a lot of the relationships. And I'll talk about the Frisian ones in a minute, but in terms of Charles Martel and Pepin of Herstal, we have this case. So when Charles was Pepin's son, he was a son by a mistress, although the mistress was also a member of the nobility. Sarah McDougall's big argument in her book, Royal Bastards, is that what really matters is the status of the mother. And so somebody like Charles Martel, who was technically illegitimate, but whose mother is also a member of the nobility, is going to be in a very different position from somebody who actually was, you know, the son of a kitchen maid. Then there's a very kind of complicated dynamic that then gets cut. Okay, so first of all, it's interesting. So they named the child Drogo. Drogo is actually the name of Charles's older half-brother who actually predeceased Pepin.
Well, yeah, that doesn't work at all.
The person who he's clearly supposed to be is someone named Theudewald, who is...
Okay, but I can see why they didn't name one of the characters Theudewald.
I mean, he's only there for like 3 seconds and they shove him off a wall. They couldn't call him Theudewald.
And also then you could make jokes about Theudewald going off the wall. But...
So Pepin actually does decide, basically his wife talks him into replacing Charles as his heir, and instead of naming Charles as his heir, which is what people expect, instead naming Theudewald, who is his grandson by one of the dead sons with the wife, whose name is, I believe, Plectrude.
I mean, you really gotta love.
I had a great time with Frankish names over here.
Yeah.
One of the things that is actually really interesting, so Charles does obviously end up taking the throne instead of Theudewald, and this is something that there is a bit of a war about it, that, you know, the nobles are actually largely on Charles's side because nobody wants a little kid as king, and he is pretty young. But one of the interesting things...
probably all students are really glad that now they're having to learn the name Charles Martel and not the name Theudewald.
Theudewald, especially because, like, you know, I mean, this is like the grandfather of, is that right? Grandfather of Charlemagne?
Yes, yeah, grandfather of Charlemagne.
Can you imagine if we had to do Theudewaldemain?
Oh god.
Like, can you imagine? Yeah, if his name was Theudewald and then that then was also his grandson's name, and his grandson then was basically Charlemagne, and we had to like talk about like
yes, no, that would be terrible.
the Great, and
every
time
goodness
teaching.
that Charles Martel like got his stuff together.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is that he did not actually murder Theudewald, which honestly, I mean, you know, like it's, you know, certainly, I mean, it's presented in the film, it's right. It's like, it's not surprising that he murders him. It's the kind of obvious thing to do when you're, you know, usurping the throne from him. You don't worry about him when he gets older. But I think it's really interesting. Charles actually doesn't murder him. He lets him live, and he actually outlives Charles.
Oh. I mean, so do you think the story just like needed an extra murder in there?
Like, it's that they very much do at some point kind of move into Charles Martel as Disney villain. And so it's in quick succession. You have him murder his father, murder his nephew or whatever he is, and then rape his wife.
Yeah, I mean, those kind of are, I think, the big three of how to show you're a terrible person.
Right? You murder two people, and one of them's your dad, one of them's a little kid, and then you rape your wife. Right? It's exactly. It's
yeah,
like,
I mean, it's like, what else can you
trifecta.
do to members of your family to demonstrate that you're just a bad dude?
Yeah, and so it's just very much like, okay, so we have this ahistorical event that's really just in service of saying, look, he's a bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm not sure I would give the people who made this movie a lot of credit in terms of having looked up any of these things and decided not to do them. I think what the people who made this movie did is just look up a bunch of names that were names of people involved in things at the time, and then wrote their own story and inserted the names.
I mean, that's actually often how I feel watching movies set in the Middle Ages, is that it kind of seems like somebody skimmed a Wikipedia article when they were drunk and then the next day tried to retell the story as they remembered it. And then also somebody repeated it through a game of telephone a couple of times.
What it reminds me of, since we all know that I, read way too much fan fiction, is sometimes you read fan fiction where every single character is out of character. And it does have this feeling of like someone just took the names of people in a story and then sort of wrote their own story with these names, but it doesn't have enough relationship with the actual canon material for it to be making sense or sort of like give you any of the emotional catharsis that fan fiction does. And that's how this felt to me, the sort of that, oh, you've just sort of taken these names. These were names of some Franks at the time. These were some names of some Frisians at the time. Let's go.
Yeah. And this is also a good place for the Historia at Veritas, where I talk about a real person, event, or phenomenon, to talk about Redbad. So, and also, by the way, as our link with Charles Martel and all of that, so the Cinda character is a real person whose name is Theodsvind, or Theudiscinda is the real name. And she's not Redbad's sister. She's his daughter.
Yeah. And so this is something that when I was sort of looking at what like other people say about this film, because I like to know what my own ideas are correct before I say them. That was one of sort of the criticisms that I heard a lot about the sort of way Redbad was being portrayed, was in terms of his like actual real life diplomatic relationships with the Franks. That like while there were these like periods of battle, he also was very much trying to be a diplomat and doing things like marrying his daughter into the Frankish royal family.
And she actually might be the mother of Theudewald.
Sorry, she's chuckling about Theudewald.
She's definitely the wife of Theudewald's father, and based on the name Theudisivinda Grimawald and then Theudewald, based on the name combo,
that's true.
Right? Yeah,
that
that's
would suggest.
Yeah. So the child that doesn't get murdered is possibly Redbad's grandson.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
But there is this long history of him having had these diplomatic relationships, especially because, so there's this interesting kind of pragmatism in some sense that with all of these people. Redbad is, he's kind of tries to at some point get Frisia sort of back from the Franks, and then basically kind of like looks at Mike from Breaking Bad, aka Pepin, and sort of decides basically like, I think you have me beat, and basically kind of gives up for a while. And that's the context in which he then makes this marriage alliance and has this diplomatic relationship with them. And it's not until Pepin dies that at that point, he's like, I don't know what, things were like a mess for a little bit while they're working out the succession. And then it's like, well, I don't really know what this guy Charles can do. That's the point at which he actually takes the initiative and does not get quite as far as Clam, but does get as far as Cologne, which is
and I think
not bad. I don't know why. Like, I don't know where Clams came from, by the way. Like, why is so much of this movie in Clam?
And maybe it's like a city that people have heard of and associate with the Middle Ages.
Haven't they heard of Cologne?
But that's not a city now that's associated with France.
Good point.
So I think it's because like people hear Franks and they're like, oh, that's France.
You have to be in France.
Yeah. So that's the reason for that. I don't know.
Honestly, we should probably be happy that they're not just like in Paris and like Redbad like waves at the Louvre as he goes by.
I wouldn't put a lot of things past the people who made this movie.
I think we should be lucky that didn't happen.
Yeah, no, we probably should. But yeah, I think overall this is the kind of story where you're taking what was a very nuanced relationship that had periods of fighting and periods of violence, and also periods of like trying to establish diplomatic relationships with both sides, trying to sort of get the best deal that they could, whether it was when they were more militarily powerful or when they thought they could negotiate. But that doesn't work well for a story that wants to be incredibly black and white about these are the good guys and these are the bad guys.
Exactly.
And I think also that's similar to the sort of way in which this doesn't represent Redbad's actual relationship with Christianity. That was actually like a quite complex relationship. There were times when he was entertaining missionaries in his lands, and there were times when he was also trying to kick out missionaries. So it wasn't.
And this is the context in which and this is the context in which this line about this baptism actually happened, is something that's presented, at least, as he allegedly is taking the possibility of getting baptized seriously. And what in the context actually makes that speech meaningful is that it's him actually grappling with the fact that if he does this and, seriously accepts the idea of Christianity and heaven and hell, that means that he's not going to be with his ancestors. Says that he would rather go to hell and see his ancestors again than spend eternity with a bunch of paupers.
Yeah,
which is a very funny representation of Christianity.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe if you only see Christianity as these like random wandering missionaries that you like,
or if they keep preaching the like whole bit about Jesus saying it's so hard for a rich man to get into heaven.
Yeah, and you're like in your in your palace, and
you're like this king, and you're like,
this seems not ideal for me right now.
It's like, I'm not sure I'm here for that.
I thought that was such an incredibly sort of sweet story of someone who like had this rather complex relationship with religion.
Yeah.
And was sort of considering this new religion in his area that was sort of catching on with some people, but also was sort of the religion of someone who he was in this sort of protracted, long, sometimes battle, sometimes diplomatic negotiations with.
They flatten that, and then in its place, they create out of nothing this hero's journey narrative of his exile and return, which is nothing. He's in fact already, and he's king going back to like 680. So already,
the whole like weird thing of him like, oh wait, I'm not king. That's completely invented.
Yeah, he's already in charge. I mean, so there's like a weird thing apparently where people are arguing whether king or duke is the correct term, which I'm not going to personally intervene in.
We're applying modern terms to something where they would have had
we're certainly
word in Frisian, and we have like Frankish accounts of this anyway.
Exactly.
So it's we're applying the Franks.
Right,
they're
like
just
we're using like Frankish terms, is that right? I mean, like we're using like Latinate terminology.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I'm sure maybe this is something
whatever
that matters to people who do specifically study political relationships or relationships
of
power
sure
in the early medieval world. But I think we can just say this is a person who is in power in Frisia. We can call him a king.
Right. And the other thing that I wanted to note about Redbad is exactly this fact that he's very much not cut out of the Christian sources. So first of all,
these are actually the sources we have about him.
These are the sources we have. Like we don't have that many sources in general, and the ones we have, I think, are pretty much all Christian.
It's actually kind of phenomenal that he's been able to like become this great sort of folk hero based on how little we know about him.
Right. And it's this interesting trajectory, it seems, in that, so in a lot of the early Christian sources, and some of them at least, he's being portrayed as this like archetypal, like stubborn pagan king. Like he's your like best example of this. And then he ends up kind of like, he kind of gets maneuvered in these really interesting ways. So apparently he's in the Chanson de Roland.
Wait, really?
Yes.
What?
Yes. I found this whole article about like Redbad past and present, and the like rehabilitation of Redbad and the transformation of him into a folk hero starting in about the 11th century. In the Chanson de Roland, there is a warrior who's called Rimbaud, which is apparently is supposed to be Redbad, and he leads a contingent of Frisian knights to aid Charles Martel in the campaign, like in this campaign in Spain.
Oh, how helpful. He and Martel could rule the world together.
Exactly, right? We just want to be friends and fight the Muslims. Oh, God. Oh, fuck.
Oh, no. I mean, that was perhaps the subtext.
God damn it. God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they should have just made a movie about that and made their message a lot more blatant.
Right. But yeah, so he keeps showing up basically as in this kind of weird move where they transform the enemies of these Frankish rulers, that they kind of transform them into their allies in these kind of heroic literary representations. And in that, he's kind of suddenly becomes this like fun hero. And then we start to have like Frisian families who are claiming descent from him. The Frisian coat of arms is given this origin story that links it to Redbad. Then he really also takes off in Frisian nationalism starting in about the 19th century.
Can we also talk about the 15th century?
Yes, please tell me about the 15th century.
Sorry. No, I shouldn't laugh. Maybe you could have a part of me bursting out laughing. Okay. There is a 15th century Gesta Frisonum, which tells this frankly amazing story about how Charles Martel and Redbad decide who gets to rule over Frisia, because they're both like, well, we can't just keep fighting because that would be fruitless, but instead we're going to have a standing contest where they just stand and the first person to like bend over or like drop their hands
love
is the
it.
one who loses. And so, however,
That's
Charles
hilarious.
Martel cheats. Charles Martel like takes off one of his gloves and drops it on the ground. And then being a polite human, Redbad picks up his glove and then Martel's like, haha, you lost. Now I get all of Frisia. Anyway, I think that is neither here nor there in regards to your well-put narrative of the changing reputation of Redbad through the ages, but maybe does emphasize the way in which he sort of crops up in medieval stories and sort of persists as this hero, which is probably why we got today to when a director, because the director is making a sort of series of films, like one of those sort of spiritual trilogies, where the films aren't really a trilogy, but they're all sort of on the same idea. And there's a spiritual trilogy of sort of the great Dutch heroes. And he chose Redbad to be one of his great Dutch heroes.
I saw that and I actually found it very funny because the trilogy does not seem to be going in chronological order.
Well, I mean, I mean, we might put that in the category of other things that just seemed like weird and unplanned. I read an absolutely scathing interview of someone who clearly did not like this film, because I was using this to, practice reading Dutch news articles. And so this guy was like ripping into the fact that this director, though he is Dutch, he lives in America. And of course, it's like, well, I mean, he's technically Dutch and he's making these Dutch movies, but like, he lives in America. But he's making these movies to try to make us feel like we need sort of national heroes in the way that America thinks they need national heroes.
Ooh.
It's like, oh, wow. Yeah. So there was this sort of sense of like, this is like an Americanized view of history of like, oh, we need to search our past and raise up these national heroes.
Find our great white men.
Yeah, find our great white man. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we're gonna have nationalism, you need to pick the great
more
white
great
men.
White men.
Yes.
I will also note, Papo is one of the, I believe, like the next definitively mentioned Frisian king, but is not necessarily Redbad's son.
Which I think also goes back to the kinds of sources that we have about the Frisians, that it's sort of like, it crops up in sources of, this is the king that we're negotiating, or duke that we're negotiating with, but that we don't know familial history. And I think it might be the same case with Aldegisel, who's maybe his father.
Yes.
But it's sort of like, we know
they
that
debate whether or not it's his. Yeah, that there is a debate about whether or not Aldegisel is Redbad's father or not. Yeah. Papo, I think actually it seemed from what I was coming across, if somebody is better on this particular area than I am, they should feel free to let me know if they think I'm wrong. But my sense is that Papo actually, if anything, we think is probably not his son.
But do we think that Papo was in fact a baby who was in a lot of battles?
I mean, that might explain why he wasn't very good at it.
Yeah, it does seem like things did not go well under Papo's tenure.
Yeah, because it's under Papo that Charles basically comes back into Frisia, wins a couple of decisive victories, and at one of these big battles, Papo is killed in 734. R.I.P. Papo.
I mean, I think there is some level of truth to the sort of final words on the screen at the end of the movie of how like, while Redbad was still alive, like Frisia was, well, maybe not Frisia was free, because that's sort of this weird framing of the sort of freedom of Frisia versus the tyranny under the Franks. But it was sort of, while Redbad was alive, he was able to keep the Frisians going.
They were not under Frankish rule.
So at least that part of the ending text was true.
Yeah.
Even if most of the ending text was absolutely ridiculous.
Is there anything else you want to add about Redbad? That's really all I think I know about Redbad.
Oh, no, I think that covers it. Yeah. I mean, I mostly just wanted to talk about the amazing story of standing still with your arms stretched out as a way to decide your own plan.
That's a great story.
But I think that is the most important thing about Redbad and the thing that everyone should be talking more about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, one thing that, I mean, maybe they just want fewer characters, but it's Saint Wolfram who does the pseudo-baptism. It's not Willibrord. And that seems like that would be something that would maybe
it is Willibrord. I think it is Willibrord in some sources, is that it's there's some sources that say it's Wolfram and some that say it's Willibrord.
Because the Saint's wife, the entire story that's actually told in, like it's the Vita Wolframni that it's actually told in.
So
but it might be that there are other sources that they say it's Willibrord.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly from my readings about Redbad that I did today, because this is, not my, I'm an Iberianist, like this is not my main area exactly. I do late medieval Iberia. But from my readings about Redbad, it seems that there's a couple of versions from the story and that they pick different saintly W's to associate it with.
Well, maybe those were the versions that the people making this movie were reading, and they weren't reading the Vita Wolframni, which is a really fun saint's life. Also setting off people in rafts in it. More people should read.
Which they probably, maybe they did read that, but it probably is that they needed to have fewer characters, right? And there's already so many characters, and I don't know who any of them are.
And I think also like Willibrord and Boniface are much more famous, like missionaries.
Yeah.
Like
So
people
that's my
might
guess,
have heard
that
of
they
Willibrord and Boniface in a way that like I only know of, say, Wolfram because of this specific like pseudo baptism.
Yeah, that's my guess. Yeah, is that they were probably like decided that Wolfram didn't do enough separately to justify him being a third character, and it was easy to just kind of fold him into Willibrord.
Oh, too bad. But, oh well.
I know. So we can now do the Fabula Nostra, where we come up with a film or show inspired by this one. I'm happy to go first, which is that. So I'm going to do what I always do, which is that I take a movie which is about men and battles and say, that's fucking dumb. I want to do something completely different. So one of the things that I think is actually interesting that they don't really do anything with is the fact that Freya is a Christian living in this still majority polytheistic society. And so that's just what I want. I want a movie that's about the Christianization of Frisia that has somebody who is perhaps grappling with this question of the violence, but also is somebody who genuinely has this religious conviction, and it's also a religious conviction that is at odds with a lot of the people around her. And I think that would be a really interesting movie.
Sarah, that sounds like an amazing movie. It also sounds like a movie that would have, character development and characters with inner worlds. And also, that sounds like the kind of movie that could have this scene of the baptism. Though I do think in the movie Redbad should be a minor character, but he could be a minor character. I also think it's a fun move in movies where you have like a sort of famous person as a minor character.
Like what I would want to do is have her just be some like rando Frisian lady. And have
she's not in love with Redbad inexplicably.
No, Redbad's like the king or whatever, but like she doesn't like know him. But like she ends up like witnessing this baptism scene. And I think it's also something that she could have really complicated feelings about, that she could find some of the things about what he says interesting or compelling, but it still doesn't, necessarily make her change her faith, right? But it's again that she's kind of grappling with, it's kind of weird in a way also that I think could be interesting to grapple with like a Christian being a minority.
Yeah, and I think it would also be very interesting to sort of see what like this missionary situation was like in a maybe more historically accurate way than them sort of walking in and hitting people on the head with rocks. That you have people sort of going in and discussing Christianity and trying to convince people, and what it's like to be one of the people who's convinced when other people weren't convinced, and also maybe feel a connection with someone who's a stranger, in that like she might have had a connection with a missionary who she found really compelling. And then also obviously you have connections with your local community that maybe then feel different.
And so that I think would be really interesting. I think it would be a great movie with this probably blonde woman's rich inner life.
She probably would be blonde, but at least you could try to make it so she didn't look like every other woman in your movie.
I would try. I would work hard.
Though also I do believe that given like a lot of personality to all of these characters, that might have ameliorated the issue of all the blonde women looking the same.
Yeah, I think if they had enough of a distinct personality and you actually knew something about any of them other than their relationship to Redbad, I think that absolutely would have helped.
No, totally. Okay, so I didn't really do the assignment, Sarah. I did a different assignment. I understood the assignment. I just did not do it.
It's fine.
Instead, what I wanted to talk about, I fear this may drastically lower the level of professionalism on your podcast.
That's fine. It's pretty low as it is.
So, as you know, I have poisoned my brain by reading a lot of fan fiction over the past decade. So I went out and tried to find fan fiction based on this movie. And I regret to inform you and all of our listeners that I couldn't find any, which is, understandable because it wasn't a very good movie and probably no one watched it. Because I think you have to like enjoy an experience of fiction to be like, I would like to write fan fiction about it. However, I consider myself an expert on fan fiction tropes. And so I would like to say, based on this movie, there is a really obvious choice of what the fan fiction would be based on this movie.
I think I have a guess about that.
And it is almost entirely based on the scene where Charles Martel looks at Redbad in the heat of battle and says, we could have ruled the world together. This material is, I think, really fertile ground for what is called an enemies to lovers romance.
Absolutely.
And I think it could have been done really well in the hands of the right fan fiction author. So that is what I was imagining. And the thing that could be inspired by this work was not a movie, but a piece of fan fiction where we get to find out what it's like for Martel and Redbad to rule the world together.
I think that sounds great. I'm going to take it one step further and say I think that should be a movie. These are original characters. They're historical figure. Why not have a movie about a
it would
romance
be about
between Redbad and Charles Martel.
As historically accurate as this movie.
Yeah, at least it would be. Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be any less historically accurate, and at least it would be interesting.
And I think it actually could be very interesting in terms of like trying to negotiate the power in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to rule the world together, like what does that really mean? Like, is one of them sort of ruling as a regent under the other, or are they actually like co-rulers? Also, what does Pepin have to say about all of this?
It's a good question.
There's just a lot to work with here.
I think that would be great. And I think that should be a movie.
Well, I mean, I assume that along with your podcast, you just have like funding to make movies. So
yes, I do.
You should make it happen. We'll make both the movies. It'll be great.
I assume there are very big deal producers that are listening to this and that I'm just waiting any day now to get the call.
Yeah, no, I mean, I assume as soon as you put this online, people will be like, they should be making movies.
They'll be calling.
Yeah. I mean, it must have cost a huge amount of money to make this movie, right?
Oh, yes.
Like, so that, I don't know. I almost felt like, this is going to sound too mean. I don't want to be, I'm like, what if the person who made this movie is listening? They'll be so offended and sad. But
they probably won't be.
I felt like almost embarrassed for them. Like, you clearly tried. You tried really hard and you did a bad job.
So that's a good lead into the ratio or rating section. Or sorry, the estimatio. The estimatio.
I wasn't giving a number between 1 and 5 or whatever. I was just telling you tried and you did a bad job.
But I think that is a good lead into our rating, our estimatio or rating from 1 to 5 of this movie. So what does he tried and did a bad job numerically translating to?
Okay, so I would say this movie earns 1 entire point for the pigs. I was a big fan of the pigs, and I think it earns 1 entire other point for the use of language, because I thought that was cool. But then I think it earns 0 more points. And then it in fact loses a point because of the convoluted plot, giving it a total of 1 out of 5. Because I don't want to be watching a movie and be questioning, am I too stupid to follow this plot?
Right?
How did I convince people to give me a job teaching history when I cannot follow the plot of this movie? So that was not an experience I enjoyed.
I'm also going to give it a 1 out of 5. It gets a low rating due to the fact that it may or may not be white supremacist propaganda. That's certainly
that's a good reason to take off some points.
The historical choices are ludicrous, and in many cases I think are not as interesting, again, that it's not as interesting necessarily as what actually happened. I think that the rape scene is extremely irresponsible.
It's a very interesting, nuanced story that
absolutely
could have been more interesting, like in your version of this movie.
Exactly, like in my version of this movie. I think the rape scene is extremely irresponsible, and the portrayals of women are poor, especially because it's also we have them fighting, but they don't do anything or have personality. So it just seems like this half-ass, look, we had gender equality, but also we do not give a shit about women. Yeah, that was something that I was definitely thinking while watching this movie, that it seems like there was an attempt made by someone who didn't really know what it means to actually have female characters in your movie, and sort of had this idea in their head of oh, I'm putting some women in pants and having them fight. Look, I'm such a feminist. Right. But the women are not developed, nor do they meaningfully contribute to the plot, except insofar as they get Redbad to be cool, they get Redbad to accept his inner greatness.
Yeah, and there are so many conversations between women and Redbad that are totally about Redbad's issues, or really his one issue of whether he's going to take up the mantle of his father and defend the traditions of the Frisians. They must have thoughts about their own lives. We don't know anything about them, but
you would think they had them. You think?
Probably. I mean, I don't know. Are women kind of just automaton robots?
They might be. Maybe.
Yeah, and they just sort of respond to what men say, but don't have any inner thoughts. That is what this movie led me to believe.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep. So I'm gonna also go with a 1 out of 5. Okay. The other thing also, this movie could have been 1 hour shorter.
Oh,
and it would have been better.
I mean, I thought you were about to say this movie could have been 1 hour long. I was like, oh, maybe. Maybe there, I don't know.
Not quite. Well, I don't know. Actually, I think you probably could have had basically a TV episode. I think you could have had a TV episode that was like basically got across the point. But if it was going to be a movie, I think you could have done this in approximately 90 minutes.
Yeah,
certainly under 2 hours.
Yeah, and it also was the kind of movie where you could definitely feel how long it was taking. Because I think there are some movies that are quite long, but because it has a very tight plot structure and because you're actively gripped by the emotional narratives of the story of the characters, you're kind of fine with it because your attention is being taken up the whole time. And this was a movie where I definitely checked the time.
I checked the time a lot. I took a lot of breaks, actually. Like I got up multiple times and I was like,
helped.
Maybe I should get some food. I took a
like try
break.
to doing something else. Like I'd be like watching the movie and I'd be like, I wonder if I can do something else while I'm watching this.
I also tried that, but especially because I do not speak any Dutch, I quickly realized that I absolutely could not do that because like I can't read the subtitles and pay attention to that and do other things at the same time. That was really what the struggle was.
Yeah, I will say that was another one of the, very minor things like about the movie. I like that they had simple dialogue in Dutch.
Yeah.
That's helpful for, the Dutch language learners among us.
I'm glad that it was helpful in that regard. But as somebody
who speaks
make me
feel
Dutch,
bad for recommending this movie for the sole reason that it was about Redbad and was partially in Dutch. And I was like, that sounds like fun. Let's watch that. And then
I've watched worse.
Okay, well, that's reassuring.
Our mutual friend, Catherine Hindley, might never forgive me for making her watch and discuss the 2007 Beowulf.
That's true. That did seem like quite a scarring experience. At least there were no, genitalia in this movie. Exactly.
No genitalia, no weird representations of genitalia. I think that's something to be said in its favor.
Well, I'm glad that we found something to say in favor of this movie.
Right. There we go. 1 out of 5, not too much genitalia. Raves Sarah and Mireille.
Wow. Yeah, no, I should definitely do movie reviews professionally. I'd be great at it, clearly.
Well, speaking of things that we do professionally, are there places that the listeners could find you on the internet if they so desired in a professional or personal capacity?
Well, I'm not a very professional person. Just kidding. So I'm on Twitter. I am at pardon_mi. So it's like pardon me, but with MI, since my first name is Mireille. So
yeah, I never got that.
Yeah, people got that.
It was just it's your name.
Reaction a lot recently where I explained it to someone and they're like, what? So I think the lesson here is I should have come up with a cleverer Twitter handle. Also, that same handle is also what I am on TikTok, where I make funny videos making fun of academia and some historical videos trying to educate people. I wanted to create, I'm sorry, this is not helpful for your podcast. I was just talking to you, Sarah, but I wanted to create an unprofessional TikTok in that I wanted to talk about my hobbies or things that I enjoyed or do funny dances. But then I kept seeing people post things on TikTok about medieval history that were wrong. So then all of a sudden I'm creating this professional medieval history TikTok because people are just saying not even complex things wrong, just very simple things wrong. So I was like, well, I got it. Someone needs to step in here. And now I've created this professional-ish TikTok. And it's gotten a non-negligible amount of traction, which is a lot of pressure. Anyway, I'm feeling a lot of pressure for my TikTok presence right now, which I'm now ranting to your podcast about.
Exactly. Well, now you can get more TikTok followers.
Yeah, no, please come follow me on TikTok. It's a lot of making fun of myself, and you may learn something about medieval history. I have talked about Redbad on my podcast. Talked about Redbad on my TikTok before.
You're the one person I follow on TikTok because I do not understand TikTok, and most of my TikTok watching is people just sending me TikToks.
Wait, actually, I didn't even know you followed me on TikTok. This is the weird thing about TikTok. I don't know who follows me, and then people in my everyday life mention something I did on TikTok, and it concerns me. So yeah, I'm glad to know you followed me. I did not know that, but I do like having more followers because it feeds my ego.
Yeah, I also like followers to feed my ego. So if you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow the podcast on Twitter at Media-eval Pod. Please really feed my ego by giving the podcast a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, and I will read new 5-star reviews in future episodes. And you can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Sarah ifft. And if you have any questions or suggestions, I would love to hear from you via email at media.evalpod@gmail.com. Mireille, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I would like to apologize to any actual people from the Netherlands if I mischaracterize your current politics right now or pronounce words wrong. Ik ken het Nederlands spreken, maar niet zo goed.
And I declaim all deep knowledge of the Dutch language or its politics.
So I'm sure this was just great, and all your Dutch listeners, who I assume they're just tons of Dutch listeners of this podcast.
I might have some Dutch listeners. I don't know. Dutch listeners, please get in touch. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, please tell me all the words that Mireille pronounced wrong.
How do you say goodbye in Dutch?
Tot ziens?
Tot ziens.
Yeah, or it's still like until the next time I see you, which is good because, you know, the next time they see you on the podcast. Tot ziens.
Yes. So tot ziens, and thank you for listening to Media-eval.